Sweet. All right. Now, 45. This is the episode where. No, wait. Fuck. Did I just fuck that up? Is this episode 44? New episode, new year. Same confusion is what we're titling it officially. Welcome to the Young Talk Podcast. This is Father B. Happy New Year. Happy Christmas. Happy New Age. Okay. Now, we are doing some weird stuff this year. It's going to be fun as hell. And I'm so excited that we are trying so many new things here. So this episode, we're going to be covering so many weird topics. So what this episode is really is it's a stitching of recordings. This is what started out as something that was really interesting and really silly to kind of goof around about. I've kind of turned into something that I think is really important to understand, because things like that they discuss about on the Whatever podcast, they use history as a way to rage bait and clickbait. But the reality is history is really not a joke. There are terrible things that have happened to a lot of people, including European white people, right? And I think we need to acknowledge that as a generation, we have to be able to recognize that we can't just make jokes about it, but we have to put action to the context and to the history and to the reality in which we live in, because things are getting worse in this country because we aren't doing anything. You know, we're just looking at it, laughing at it, and then forgetting that we are still in said cages. I hope you and I can engage this stuff and really take away something from it. So with that, if you enjoy this content, please leave a like, subscribe, hit the bell, do all the wonderful things that I know you want to do, because this year GTA 6 is coming out, okay? And before that happens, we need to be ready. The Whatever podcast. Have you heard of it? I hope not, because I'm gonna ruin your night if you haven't heard of it. I've been wanting to talk about this podcast for a minute, but I've been like holding back because these episodes are so fucking long for no reason. Like, and I'm not talking long like 2 hours. I'm talking like 10-hour episodes. You know what I'm saying? They like spend the entire day talking about absolutely bullshit. So I had to look for ones that were shorter. The fact is, there are none that are like really short. They're all like at least 3 hours, if not more so. And the ones that I listened to that were shorter, that were on the shorter side, all of them were stupid, I think. I think all of them are dumb. I think all of them, no matter what, whether it's 10 hours, 2 hours, 9 hours, 6 hours, it's almost all actual waste of time in terms of discussion. But I was like, what's pissing me off is that one of the things that these people seem to like to do is talk about black people, talk about slavery, and talk about these ins and outs of history that they are not even on the right. They aren't even, that has nothing to do with them, right? But yet they have very strong opinions about whether or not they have the authority to speak on them. I find it wild. So I was like, hey, how about I step in? Because one, Brian is kind of a piece of shit. He is a kind of a lazy host. He is kind of a manipulative little asshole. So I'm like, hey, it's not fair for you to have like 7 women here and bash on them and put them in positions to where they are fighting against each other and fighting against their own arguments just because you're bad at presenting arguments and want to argue semantics over actual discussion. Just because you can do that doesn't mean it's fair. How about you bring some guys on and you have a nuanced conversation? But since you don't want to do that, I'm going to now do that. Not because of some sexist bullshit, but because you seem to clearly want to have power over women. So I'm going to show you how to have a little bit more intellectual power over men. But I do think it's important to address these things because the common 20-year-old is stupid as fuck. I ain't gonna lie. They're probably stupid as fuck. If you're not, shout out to you. You're above you're above the average. Congrats. Let's all keep trying to be above the average, because right now people think the average is stupid. And after listening to so many of these episodes, I understand why. It's not their fault.
We're going to have the guests introduce themselves.
Okay.
Name, age, occupation, where are you from, education.
How many witches are on this panel? We need to keep you safe, Brian. This person sent $10.
Hi, how's it going? I'm Caitlin. I'm 21 years old. I'm from Eastern North Carolina.
Nice.
I am a dancer, an exotic dancer.
Okay.
I have been for the last 3.5 years now.
Killing it.
I also do OnlyFans.
Killing it.
And I'm in school for political science right now.
Killing it.
Okay, and you do You're a dancer too? You still stripping or?
Yep.
Okay.
So he's doing this thing now where he's writing down their information. And to me, he's writing this stuff down because if you've watched any level of red pill content, you know, whatever, people like Kevin Samuels, what I watched when I used to watch them a lot because I thought his stuff was entertaining, he would do this too. He would write down stuff about the women, like how old they are, what they do, where they went to school, et cetera, to start building a history of presumptions that he can make about the decisions that she's made in life and to help himself be able to attack their morality, ethics, or values based on whether or not they do, like she says, like she's a stripper, does OnlyFans, etc., while also studying political science. He leverages that as a way to say you're not a good person because though you preach, you know, doing these right things, you go and sell your body for money. These are the type of things that he does that tries to manipulate these women. Because notice, why does he need to write this down? You don't need to write this down. Because none of the questions, to be honest, have anything to do with what they do for a living. They don't. Like, he just wants this to be able to undermine them later. This dude, unfortunately, has been hurt by women too often. And I get it. But it's like, to go and make a whole podcast that you get, then people send money to you that you don't need. To just then bring women on that you can then undermine, bash, manipulate, and gaslight. You have to be really bored. Because, I mean, I've gotten really bored because otherwise we wouldn't be looking at this.
Studying
right?
as well?
Political science.
We would just be playing Dead by Daylight right now.
That's
I believe this is one of the women who ends up leaving.
Philosophy. Okay.
Which aren't really things I'm interested in. I just needed them.
Okay. Did you have to, I mean, one big takeaway from philosophy?
So he asks her about philosophy, and this is when it probably began way earlier, but you know, we're just going to start here. So he asks her about philosophy after she explicitly says it's not something that she's really interested in and that she just took to take. So now he is using this thing where it's like, I'm going to try to challenge her on this thing that she's already said that she's not even paying attention to see if she's smart and actually cares about deep conversation, because in his mind, and I'm not just saying this, women can't appreciate things like that. So he's challenging her on if she's in her philosophy class, actually learning philosophy, actually educating herself, because in his mind, most women don't do education properly. You know, he's going to try to prove that whatever she learns in philosophy, and pretty much for the sake of argument, pretty much any of these women, whatever they're studying, he likes to challenge what they're studying to see if they actually learn anything. If not, but the reality is they're students 9 times out of 10, even if they know something, they're not going to have a full on conversation topic ready to go because they're fucking students. So whatever they do know, it's going to be like, you know, whatever I can remember, not me coming prepared to talk about my political science degree, you know, and the most interesting topic in that degree, because it's not what I came prepared to talk about. But he wants to leverage that because he makes it seem like they're not serious about their education. It's a crazy thing. And I sound crazy. But when I tell you I've heard over 9 hours of these episodes, over 10 hours probably, you know, it's all psychological. Coastal Operator says, I'm an asparagus rising, but because of Jupiter's diameter relative to the sun, I'm also retarded. Yes, sir, you are. Don't know if that's supposed to be a joke because it honestly just speaks to you. You pay $10 for that.
You work at the strip club.
Yep.
Do you engage in capitalism at the strip club?
I engage in capitalism outside of the strip club. It's
Sure.
a
Well, you have
fundamental.
to.
Yeah, you have to.
You have
exactly.
to. But there could be circumstances in which, like you, at the strip club, you try to maximize your profits.
Yes.
Now, even in a capitalist system, you could still not strictly aim to maximize profits. Like you could strike some sort of balance between being able to provide for yourself, but also, you know...
He's not a stripper. He doesn't work as a stripper. He's trying to explain to her how her job works. If she could be in charge of how much she charges each person, I'm sure she would. I'm sure she would give coupons if that was something she could actually do. It's a strip club. they're not lowering prices for people. You can come in on Tuesday at 3 p.m. and you'll probably get a little bit of a discount because it's during the day and it's Tuesday. He's explaining to her how her job works as if he does what she does for a living better than what she does. You run a podcast for a living. What do you know about taking your clothes off for money? Who has paid you to take your clothes off? Nobody. Who has asked for your nudes? Nobody. Where is your authority in the stripper universe? This is someone who's gone to the strip club, couldn't afford to be at the strip club, and then tried to get a discount and got mad when the stripper was like, nah, we can't give a discount. I'm sorry. You know, like this is what he's done. And now he's just trying to get an understanding as to why he was even at the strip club in which he couldn't even afford to be in. For the most part, when it comes to stripping, if I'm not mistaken, I've never stepped foot in a strip club, so I could be completely wrong. But you could just give them money if they're on the strip pole stand, podium, whatever, right? The only thing I think you actually would have to pay for is like a lap dance or something like that. And those are things that you could choose to do. But ultimately, if I'm not mistaken, there's like a little center stage and you can just throw money at the stripper, right? So you can afford to be at the strip club as long as you have dollar bills. I don't know what he's talking about, maximizing profits as if they have control over what a business is doing when they are not the owner of the business. You know, this would be a different conversation if this was anything else.
Yeah, I think I would consider it for like more regular customers. At most of the strip clubs that I've worked at, we don't get to choose our own prices.
Bro. I know I watched this already. Don't remember this whole conversation though. She just said it though. She doesn't make the prices. This is why. I needed to do this because I've been listening. Because again, 9 hours, dog. When you hear this shit for 9 hours and you don't have any way of like slamming on Brian for being this fucking retarded, oh, you start to go crazy.
You know, buy more on bulk.
In a communist society, there wouldn't be strip clubs, correct?
I don't know.
I have thought about that. I don't know. Ideally, men wouldn't objectify women in such a way that would create the necessity for strip clubs, but also... I mean,
the only thing I would argue is that if we're going to do that for women, we might as well do that for men. Put men in the strip club, put them both in there together. Like, what are we talking about here? We're talking about strip clubs. We're not talking about exclusively women's strip clubs. I would say yes, if it means that men and women can be in strip clubs. We have gay bars. We have all these things. If we're running a communist society, then I say, yeah, we're doing it for everybody. We're doing it for everybody. Everybody's setting their prices. Everybody's fucking under shared values, right? Because that is the communist way. Whether or not we have strip clubs or not isn't necessarily communist. It's about how we run the money is whether or not it's communist. Brian, I know you don't understand that because you can't afford to be in the strip club. That's understandable. But don't make it seem like communism falls apart if the fucking city has a strip club in it, because it doesn't. It's not a factor in the grand scheme of the society.
You said sex work, prostitution is the earliest profession. I believe either fishing or agriculture would be probably the earliest profession.
Could be.
And then maybe shortly thereafter, here's a fish, give me some pussy. That could
be like a trade barter system.
Shortly thereafter.
You never know though. You're just making assumptions about how people work at a time in which you didn't exist. You know, it's like me trying to understand what it was like in the 1500s. Couldn't fucking tell you, dude, because it wasn't what it is today. The mindset wasn't what it is today. Things were very different. All I can tell you is that the emotions were probably the same. I remember seeing the cave painting of the dude fucking depressed, just sitting on a chair, hunched over, trying to figure out life. So I think that's universal, and that goes across time, that people will always contemplate existence. But at the end of the day, you know, like what you can't assume that food came before sex, because it probably didn't. You know, at the end of the day, I think people sold themselves before they figured out that they could probably sell themselves and fish. You know, I think that if we want to just make assumptions about shit, we could say anything. People never had sex until they discovered fish. How about that? Put down the drink, put down the bottle, get some water.
You'd strip while you fish.
Yeah, true. I wouldn't.
Yeah, I suppose you could.
If somebody pays you like, I don't know, 30, and then another guy pays you 1,000 for like a private room, do you give them two separate things?
What are you talking?
if
Sure.
they're paying for the same room, so the $30 a song is for like a specific couch room.
Right. That's what I'm saying. Like, one guy pays you 30, another guy pays you 1,000.
Okay.
Yeah.
Those are the prices. You give them two different things, right?
Technically,
You're
I
a bad
guess
communist. You're a horrible communist.
it's
I
a
would say
strip
no.
club
But
situation.
I guess
I would say I wouldn't give them, if we were talking about communist society, if one dude paid me 30 and another dude paid me 1,000, they're getting the same thing. He just decided to pay more because I'm that good. I don't know what to tell you. You know what I'm saying? Like, that's how you, in that conversation, like, what do you mean? You're not going to get me on changing what I just said. If communism is where everybody gets the same shit, I don't care how much you pay. You can pay me as much as you want. Still gonna give you a PB&J. Still gonna give you a bologna sandwich or whatever the fuck I said I was gonna give you. You want to pay me $1,000? Great, beautiful. I really am grateful. Here's your sandwich.
can you think of a job, even in a capitalist society, that is viewed as undesirable?
Absolutely.
All of them.
Perhaps waste management. So garbage men, garbage collectors.
It's undesirable for you, but there are probably people who actually want to do waste management because it actually is a huge help on the planet. I don't know what to tell you, man. You're assuming that waste management is a demeaning job without actually knowing the people who work in waste management. You can't make this argument. You don't do waste management. You know, you don't have the data of people who do waste management and say they hate it. You're just assuming that it's a demeaning job because it's picking up garbage. But you would be surprised to know they make it actually decent living doing that. So, you know, it's like it's a weird. It's not a debate or even an argument. It's just a assumption about what people feel or believe. You know,
Or people that go into sewers or dirty jobs, right?
Yeah.
sure. People who train to be technicians, engineers, construction workers. Yeah. You mean the people who decide, oh yes, this is what I want to do for a living? Yeah. They choose to do the dirty jobs because they're not so good at office work, I guess. You know what I mean?
Who would do these jobs in a communist utopia?
People
I
who
love
want to
this
do
question.
them.
It's because it's like the most asked question whenever you're talking about communism.
Yeah, who would do those jobs?
People who want to do them. Next question. Because if no one wants to do them, then we won't have them. And we'll have issues until someone wants to do them. And if no one wants to do the plumbing work or the technician work or the construction work, that city just simply won't survive. It's called survival of the fittest. You know what I mean? The only animals that survived are the ones that were willing to do the work. Giraffes' necks got longer because if they didn't, they would have died. The ones who are going to do it are the ones who want to do it. Otherwise, the city won't last. That's it. You don't need to force people into it. You could, but that's something else at that point. You don't need to make a capitalist system. You could, but then that's not a communist system. It only works if we all agree. You know what I mean? Like there are cities and societies who do that, and it does function. You know what I mean? Unfortunately, it still leads to corruption within the power system, right? We see these things with Chernobyl, with Russia, with the way they treated their people, their workers and things like that, where people were willing to do the jobs that were considered undesirable, but they did it for the betterment of their people. Like they risked their lives for the betterment of their people. They are going above their own selfish needs, egos, whatever, to better the prosperity of the society. When everybody is on that page, it's great, but it's no point if that page is also deceived with lies, corruption, and manipulation. This conversation doesn't work because it puts it all on a hypothetical that everybody is going to do things the right way, when we all know it's not that the people don't do things the right way, it's that the people in power always want to do things that benefit them more than everybody else. That's it. So no matter what conversation you have in this context, as long as that part remains true, it's always going to be unfair. In communist Russia, the answer is pay you.
The waste management.
That's pretty good. I like that one.
Can you be racist towards white people?
Ooh, we've talked about that before. I
It's been a while.
don't think so. Yeah, it's been like
You don't
2
think
years
so?
almost.
What do you think? Can you be?
My opinion is that to be racist, there has to be a history of oppression towards that people. Like the reason that, being racist towards a black person is racist is because there's a history of white people oppressing black people. I don't think there's a history of white people being oppressed in America.
Okay, so would you acknowledge that there's different types of racism?
Can you be racist towards white people? Yes, you can be racist towards any race. Racism can only come into play and dynamics of power and control for the most part. And I agree with Dr. Umar in the sense that there is a difference between racism and bigotry, right? I think everybody within their day-to-day can be bigoted, but within America, for a white person to be racist towards a minority group, there would have to be a level in which the minority group has more power over that white person in some sort of system. The answer is yes, but the more likelihood is it is unlikely for that to happen, right? So I think that when we frame this question of can you be racist towards white people, people assume that can you spread hateful things to white people based on the color of their skin? Yes, you can be a bigot. You can be. It's not hard. Can you be racist towards white people in America? You have to be in the majority. You go to a lower class environment where white people are a minority, then maybe you can be racist towards white people because you can then implement systems and functions within a structure that prevents people of said color or race to receive the same benefits. I look at it as like, let's say you have one white person in an entire community of black people on a low level or even on a high level. Let's say on a high level, on a crazy scale, on a city scale where there's literally only one white person. And every week, right, every month, the city council, people come into the city council to vote on things, right? And this one white person maybe wants a Starbucks, but no one else wants a Starbucks. So that's a level of racism, because we can always control whether or not we get Starbucks, because if all black people in that city are like, nah, we don't fuck with Starbucks, and this one white person wants a Starbucks, they're in the minority. They're going to be oppressed in the need for getting this level of coffee or this type of coffee from this company or whatever, right? It seems silly, and it seems like a crazy thing to imagine because we only understand racism under the senses of forced labor. But it is a level in which power is leveraged from one group or another to oppress or prevent another group from receiving the same amount of benefits as the rest. These questions don't work because you're not bringing them into the full understanding in which they need to be, because modern day people don't separate or don't understand the difference between being racist and being a bigot. So yes, you can be in both, but in most cases, it's very much harder to be racist towards a white person because there are virtually no systems that you can leverage over a white person within the context of society. There's a minority in the majority of power, which typically isn't the case. So, case in point, this fool has a whole panel and a whole crew of European descent people. I bet you there ain't no black people on that thing. And if there are, none of them are doing any major roles on this production. So it's like, you probably run one yourself. You know what I'm saying? And that could happen on the other scale. If I have a production full of black people and we hire one white person, best believe that white person is probably going to be scrubbing the floors while everybody else is doing the equipment. That's a little bit of racism. It's just me leveraging the power that I have to give the benefit to the people I feel are more superior for the role. Because I could not hate him. I could love that white kid, but I could never let him be in power. And that's the difference, right? I could prevent him from being in power and hate him. And then that's bigotry and racism together. But these are only definitions, why would definitions matter in a debate anyway?
If a white person were to walk up to a black person,
okay,
how complicated is this procedure? It's okay.
Procedure, bro. He needs to get him some help. He's stressed out over nothing.
If a white person
is a chair, just sit down.
Walk up to a black person and punch that black person in the face because they're black.
Mm-hmm.
That's a crime.
Would you say that that's racist?
Yeah.
I'd say it's a crime. It's not racism. No. If you walk up to someone and punch them in the face, it's a crime. If you're a white person, you walk up to a black person and you punch them, it's a crime. The only way it becomes a hate crime or a concept of racism is if that's then later understood. You need more information to make those determinations, because it's not the same, right? Unless we know that he punched him because that's how the status quo in that society is that black people get hit and it's okay, then that's racism, right? It's a different thing. But at the end of the day, it's still a crime at the end of the day.
Okay, now let's reverse it. A black person walks up to a white person and punches them in the face because they're white. Is that racist?
It's a crime.
I don't think it can be the actual definition of racist because there's no history of, I mean,
Exactly.
it's being hateful towards someone, but I think
He seems so stressed out. It's so unfortunate here. Let me just help him out here. There's a lot of definitions of racism. I remember understanding this, that they really mess up the definition by putting all these definitions for like different things. It says a person who is prejudiced or antagonistic toward a person on the basis of their membership in a particular racial or ethnic group, typically one that is a minority or marginalized, characterized by showing prejudice, discrimination, or antagonism against a person or people on the basis of their membership in a particular racial or ethnic group. Same definition twice. Why does it? So it can be an adjective or a noun. It's a characterization or an individual. And a similar word, of course, is bigot, right? And bigot is a person who obscenely and unreasonably attached to a belief, opinion, or faction, especially one who is prejudiced against antagonistic toward a person or people on the basis of their membership of a particular group. So the difference is that typically that group is a minority or marginalized. That's what makes it racist, is if that group is a minority or marginalized. And most of us that aren't white are a minority and or marginalized because guess what? You either got your land stolen, either brought here, against your will, or I think that's pretty much it. Or you came to this country, right, as an immigrant. Those are pretty much the three bases in which people typically are brought here. It's very rare at this point that you can go further back, that people didn't come here under any other basis other than that isn't a white European descent. So it's really hard to say if you can be racist towards white people because the conditions have to be there for that to even be possible, which typically it isn't. It's reasons why white people don't want to live in the ghetto, right? Because then they really will be a minority in a place in which they will be treated as racist. They will be attacked and no one will give a fuck. And then they'll start to understand that this is the black history forever and has always been. Being attacked for no fucking reason other than people thinking you deserve it because of your ethnicity. So it's very ridiculous to have this conversation with people who are not understanding what the actual definitions and what they're actually talking about, right? And it's even worse when it's literally being led by a white man. Like you're putting it in. It's all this. Just dysfunctional, and it's all a bad look. I heard that they're on episode 304. They're coming up on episode 304, and that I don't know if this is real. Could be a joke. Could be real. I don't know. He said that that 304 may be their last episode, and I'm hoping that it is, because holy shit. You're not going to be able to do anything else with your life. And it's unsustainable, especially since YouTube and no one else wants to sponsor or pay for this podcast, right? And at first it was a gimmick to get people to subscribe and pay. But guess what? People are going to stop paying for it. When they're paying $200 to send text to speech to just insult women, it gets old after a while. Your money's going to run out because you don't make actual content with any level of actual value. It's not sustainable.
for actual racism, there has to be a history of oppression towards those people.
So your definition of racism, is it prejudice plus power?
Yeah.
Yeah, you do realize that this is a newly manufactured definition of racism that is not commonly understood, like in just the common sense understanding of racism.
What is the
I don't
common
know
sense of
about that. I
racism,
think
though?
that it's a pretty common understanding of racism.
I'll Google the definition of racism,
Well, I just did.
just so I'm not like pulling one out, my own definition.
I mean, but I just did. So if you're going to look it up and it's somehow different, I don't know what you're arguing.
Discrimination or antagonism by an individual, community, or institution against a person or people on the basis of their membership in a particular racial or ethnic group.
He didn't add. That's crazy. That's actually fucking wild. So here's Brian's playing little game here, and I'm gonna show this here because that's so fucking funny that this little worm is so hell bent on trying to be right that he wants to leave out the actual details of the definition. When I just read the definition, and in fact, I'm gonna put it here so I don't have to worry about trying to edit it in. The full definition, it doesn't end at racial or ethnic group. It says typically one that is a minority or marginalized. A very important detail that I literally just said, because that is the difference between being racist and being a bigot. Everybody can be a bigot. You can walk up and punch someone that's white if you're non-white just because you hate them. That's you being a bigot. Still a hate crime, still gonna go to jail, but that's not racism because that's not a system or a power. That is just someone who is antagonistic. It's crazy that he keeps this part out, bro. What a fucking waste of air.
So it doesn't mention anything about historical oppression there.
That's crazy. That's crazy. It doesn't mention anything about historical oppression, even though it says minority and marginalized, because that would immediately connect to history, would it not? You fucking fat piece of shit, dude. I've been playing a lot of Dead by Daylight. All right. I've been playing a lot of Dead by Daylight. All right. I'm treating every survivor tonight. I'm playing Dead by Daylight tonight. I'm treating every survivor tonight like Brian. That's what I'm doing. So let's look at his preferences. Brian has a list of preferences. I mentioned this earlier. Brian likes big labia. He has all these weird ass preferences about women. Don't need to discriminate about labia. No one's that weird. But Brian has preferences. He has a list. He has reasons why he doesn't go down on women. So let's just take a look at that before we conclude this section of the podcast. Now, I understand that this is going to be this is a 3-hour podcast, but I need you to hang on because holy fuck. Every 20 minutes, every 10 minutes, every 5 minutes, it just gets weirder. And this is all the weirdness. We're getting it out the way because the rest of the podcast is valuable, education, informative, insightful, fun.
Yeah, sure.
Let's back up a little bit here. This one, it comes off the edge. They did terrible with these time steps. This one comes off the edge of the gender swap section. This is what Brian looks like gender swapped. And, you know, unfortunately for him, he looks better swapped.
Yeah, that's an average looking girl. She's average, above
What about
average.
that
Above average, below average.
bulbous nose? Is making it's screaming average.
I want to get through this so I can finish this
I
goddamn
think
edit.
just knock it down
and
like
then
a quarter of a point.
I'm so
No, that girl's
She was pretty.
minimum 5.
Pretty cute.
I
Okay.
don't think you get.
No, I believe you. I
Brianna.
changed my mind. No, I believe you.
Brianna
No,
doesn't
no.
go below a 5. Okay,
I agree.
That's ridiculous.
Brianna doesn't go below a 5. He has such high standards for himself. It's so feminine.
What do you think?
Are we all going to shame him for this?
Oh
please?
yeah, I was like, wait, why do you care about the size of the labia if you're not even like really into it like that? Just this your
I am
own
into it.
sensory
I'm into it.
pleasure, your own pleasure. That's all that matters to you.
Visual and sensory pleasure. Yeah.
What about like finger
Selfish.
stuff?
Selfish.
What do you mean?
Like you like the way it feels, finger wise,
Do I like the way it feels?
Well, I mean, it's
Or
probably
just
feels like
dick-wise?
your finger and
I mean, I like the way it feels with fingers in the sense that
oh brother.
yes.
I love how he describes it like someone who's never actually laid his hands on a woman. It's crazy. Because I'm like, I've never heard and I've never even thought about describing fingering a woman this way. But, you know, I mean, how would I describe it? Like real talk, if we're going to just be doing this, how does it feel? First time it was scary. First time I was like, I don't know what's going to happen. Is my finger going to get cut off? But as you've gotten older and more experienced, it's honestly quite the experience. You know, it's almost like a transformation and evolution of sensations that you can connect with the woman so much deeper, right? And I don't think you realize this, Brian, but your dick can only do so much, right? Even the man with the best dick ever, right? You can only do so much to bring your woman to the best satisfaction that you possibly can, believe it or not, because women's body is much more connected to their emotions and things like that. So I've learned that you can go a very long way with the right pressure, right fingers, right time, right place. I'm gonna keep it classy. Big labia or small labia, it doesn't matter. Doesn't matter. As long as you figure it out, oh, it's game time every time. Brian doesn't understand that because he has a list.
Yeah, I mean, I thought it was pretty straightforward, but I just don't want to be like, do you
But like my fingers aren't like experiencing pleasure, but
Yeah.
well, do you like
That
Which is unfortunate for you because mine do.
makes sense.
what your fingers are feeling?
yes.
It's like the heart, what the heart is
yeah,
feeling.
it's
you know?
like yeah, sure, yeah.
Do you want her to go down on you?
Whoa.
Of course he does.
We're there.
Yeah.
Yeah, he does.
Just close the whole stream out.
Brian's 100% the type of guy who's completely fine with the girl going down on him, but is completely afraid of going down on her, you know? And it genuinely, to me, just speaks as someone who does not get around enough. It just speaks that way.
Okay. Where do I begin on this?
You've already failed.
We're gonna get demonetized again.
No, we'll be fine. Does anybody else want to weigh on this oral sex thing?
Why don't you go down? Why don't you
Yeah,
choose
I'll
not?
give
Is
you-
it religion thing? Because there's some,
Religion?
they're not
I'm
religion,
not religious.
don't
I'm
like
not really
it.
religious, to be honest.
but there's some guys that find it like ew, like against it. They're very against it.
Yeah, but for me, it's not religious.
So what's the reason?
You just
I'll
like
get to that. I'll get to that in a moment, but I want to hear from the rest of it. Before I get into my piece, I want to
Okay.
give you guys a chance to talk.
I'll be honest, it feels like
This is how insane this fucking dude is. How do you dodge a question so much? They asked you a direct question. Why don't you go down on women? What it was? Why don't you describe what it's like when you do your thing down there? Can't answer either question. Too flustered to even try and come up with a lie. He's trying to throw it back at them and be like, why don't you guys answer this question while I get my thoughts together? Because it's just, you know, when it's down there, it's all fuzzy, like as if it's the most complicated thing. Yet he can rate these women down to the fucking shape and arch of their eyes, but he can't simply answer why he doesn't go down on women. Why? Well, because Brian has a list. We'll get to the list.
Sexual.
I've never asked my partner to do that, but I feel like if a guy is adamant about like I'm never gonna do it and we're together and like you've seen my body
Can
and
I
like
have you scoot your mic that way a little bit?
He's doing the fucking thing. Can I have you scoot your mic that way a little bit? Because get your fucking finger off the screen.
Scoot it that way. Yeah. Sorry. Continue.
I just think that like the need to express like how against you are like doing it is the weird part.
Right.
I don't
Me?
like no
talking
like
about
if
me?
my partner specifically, like I've never asked them to do it, but if they're like adamant about not wanting to do it, I think that's a little odd.
Right.
It's like why? We're in a relationship
I don't.
and like
I mean, I wouldn't say I'm adamant about not doing it, but when asked on a podcast where you discuss topics, I'll explain myself, of course, but I'm not. I don't know if I'm.
You're very adamant about it though, because if you weren't, you would have just been like, nah, it's just not my thing. There's no big deal. It's not like I hate it or anything. It's just not my thing. I just prefer other things that we can do. Right? Like it's a lot easier to say that than to just be like, well, you know, it's just that, well, you know, you guys mind answer? I just like, you know, like as if you're some unique specimen that just can't explain yourself. Bro,
It's
get
not
out of
something
here.
I want to do, but I wouldn't say I'm like adamant about
well then
it.
yeah, exactly.
I don't
That's
know if-
different.
I don't know if that's the right framing. What do you think?
What do you mean? What do you think? What are you asking her? You're asking her what she thinks about you not going down on women? What is this reverse mind control shit? She's supposed to figure this out?
I think that men that want to have sex with
She
women,
looks like she's trying to find some type of response because, yeah, this shit is ridiculous. She's been leading this conversation for a minute. And, you know, it's well, not for a minute, for about 5 hours, really. And it you know, She's carrying the team.
Women should be eating it. I don't care.
Do you think so? I think that was this last episode. I think they said I was gay. They think it's kind of gay to not go down on a woman.
You
So
like
do
the
you?
private parts, and like I.
But do you think it's gay for a guy who doesn't want to
No.
go down on a girl?
Or replace gay with feminine, right? Because I could 100% agree. It's a submissive position that you're putting yourself in, but that's kind of the whole idea with sex with your partner or whoever, where you are giving up a part of yourself. You're being vulnerable for one thing, right? Like you're being exposed. You're naked. When you're making yourself as vulnerable to literally anything, this person could kill you. A meteor could come out of nowhere. Someone could run into your house. You could be exposed to a random chemical. Anything could happen to you. So you're already putting yourself in a vulnerable position, in a submissive position to just the environment. So yes, is it gay? I wouldn't say gay. I would say it's submissive and vulnerable, which is completely fine. You know, you're capable of it.
Why?
I feel like you should want to be attracted to that.
I am attracted to the labia.
I feel like it's
You're
a turn
attracted
off
to the
if you
labia.
don't want-
You're not a fan of receiving.
No.
Okay.
I would rather give than receive. So like it's not a huge deal to me, but it is a turnoff if you don't want to do it.
Yeah, because it's like,
Even though
why?
you don't
Yeah,
really want
because
it.
you should want every part of me.
Every
Yeah.
part?
Like you
Every
don't need to
part.
like
Every part.
Every part.
freaking yearn from
Like
the
your
top
toes?
of a building,
Yes,
but
even the toes.
Like
want the
Even
toes.
the tossing a salad?
Even toss the salad with the toes. All of it.
She's kind of crazy, but you know, horse girl.
What if
I mean, it's doing the act on a different part. We're getting lost in the weeds here. I need to get to the list. This is talking about, is it gay? I just need to see his list. And because I see the timestamp throat cancer. And we are at least 13 minutes out from that. So we're just going to let it cook.
I feel like
Do you
Sex
are
means
you
nothing to me.
allowed to say the N-word?
I don't know where that came from.
that was random, but
What
you
a
know,
segue.
I do think
Because you're
about that sometimes.
Blasian. You're black and Asian.
Well, I say it anyway.
Okay. All right. Yeah, I remember this part. Yeah. All right. I forgot this was here. Wow. You know, is she allowed to say the N-word? You know, I'm just gonna go ahead and I'm gonna just say no. This is the problem, because to me it's like, if you have to ask, then the answer is no, because you don't pass the test. You know, the people who can say it don't ask. They don't have to, because they look in the mirror and they're like, oh no, I'm good. In fact, they don't even consider having to ask or thinking about it, because that's insane. I never understand the trend of asking people if they can say the N-word as if it's a special word, when it's one of the most offensive words to describe a black person, right? The only way I've seen it changed is Tupac. And outside of that, no one's using it that way. So like, no, because you're not using it on a basis of uplifting the black community. You don't have an understanding. Like, you're just using it because you want to say a bad word, you know, and make it seem cool. But nah, you can say the word if you're willing to like to put on a noose or something. I don't know. Like, you what? Bruh.
Wow. Not the hard R though. Maybe just the
Well,
A.
I don't think I've ever
So can you
needed
do
to.
can you do me a favor? Whenever I say really, can you end it with like, because
I'm just gonna jump past it because she does, and it's honestly as cringe as you would imagine. We aren't. I don't need to live through it
it's
twice.
kind of gay. Just say it.
I feel like
No.
they answered this already.
No.
Can I have you just move your mic that way? Next.
Me or her?
Her. She's moving her mic. Tilt it down too. Go ahead. Go ahead. You don't have to wait for her to adjust her mic. Can you answer the question? No, don't move your mic, silly.
That's what I'm asking
Silly
you.
goat.
Yes.
Silly
Okay,
goat.
Put it back. I put it back.
Silly goat and replace a dumb bitch. That's crazy, man. Brian is an actual sociopath. This man is He's literally on edge every episode. And I could imagine, because this is what, 5 hours in? Jeez, how do you not take cocaine, bro?
All right, here's my rebuttal.
Okay.
And I wrote it down. I actually wrote it down because I got flack on the internet a couple days ago. So maybe on Valentine's, if she gets me some flowers and chocolate, maybe.
Maybe on Valentine's, if she gets me flowers and chocolate. Bro, man, Brian wants to be dating a man so bad. It's so crazy. This dude is actually in need of male companionship so bad. It's crazy. He needs to date someone. He needs a man in his life. I don't understand. I like how in his mind Valentine's Day is for him.
Anniversary, maybe. Just kidding. No, probably not even then. So I'll say this.
That's actually really.
So okay, I don't like to give head. You might ask why.
I don't know, man. That sounds like a lot of work.
Wow, that's funny. This is the first time I'm like looking at this. I just watched him type into like the thing to cue the little soundboard. This dude is man, he's living in his own little world, huh? I'm trying to get there. I need to get me a little soundboard so I can just start typing shit and having little goofy ass things, because why edit them in? Why put the work in to edit and all that when you can just run for 9 hours talking about fucking nothing?
Work.
Now I want to clarify one thing. I'm not like
he's lazy.
I'm not grossed out by pussy. Quite the contrary. I love pussy. And the bigger the labia, the pussy, well, big pussy, big labia, kind of different. Whatever. The bigger the better, labia. I only date women with outies. So nobody can tell me, look me straight in the eyes and say that I, Brian, am scared of pussy. I'll tell you why, and there's few reasons. And I broke it down into 7 arguments. 7 arguments.
Wow.
The fact that you got 7 arguments about why you don't go down on women, dog. Like, you could have 1, you could have 2, maybe. I'll even let you have 3 because we're in America. But 7, that's a whole nother hand, man. That's a whole nother hand. What are you doing?
I don't do that. I'll do anything for love, but I won't do that.
Disgusting. Too much money, too much time, too much air in the brain.
Good time.
These reasons better be really, really good.
Like,
I'm not
so
gonna lie.
good. Like
He
No,
sat and wrote these down.
Yeah.
They're not going to be that good. That's the problem. This timestamp is called throat cancer.
Okay,
genuinely.
so number 1, oral sex is the leading risk for throat cancer.
Oh.
Okay?
He says this, but also says he wants women to go down on him. So he's all for throat cancer. He just doesn't want to catch it himself. What a Chad.
Shut up.
It's true. In men,
Is this
leading risk factor for throat cancer in men, oral sex. That's my number 1 argument.
Well, yeah, because how else would men get throat cancer? Like, he's making it seem like there are just so many other ways you can contract throat cancer, when it's like, well, yeah, that's typically the thing you're gonna do.
By the way, the studies show that men are 4 times. Oh, hey, calm down, ladies. 4 times as likely to get throat cancer as women are. Just saying. Just pointing that out. And by the way, the risk of transmission is higher from women to men. And without being graphic, this is somewhat due to women's physiology. Women shed more virus, and they transmit higher viral loads.
This is a man who gets so much women. They must love being in bed with him. Like, it has to be like just the most magical time, to worry about viral loads and throat cancer and all this stupid shit. Like, this is the problem. This isn't my generation. Nah, this is not. It will never be. This is something else. This is a little slit in the timeline that we're really going to have to work hard to just fade away. Who talks like this? I don't. This woman is disgusted. This other woman is probably just dumbfounded, because I am. And the prude is just waiting to see how how the first girl responds to all this, who just looks miserable because Brian just doesn't have sex, and I don't think he will have sex. I don't think he's going to have sex for a long time because he doesn't want to risk viral loads, due to women's physiology, which is probably why he's going to start dating men, just so that way it makes more sense, because he can avoid the viral loads, he can avoid throat cancer, and he doesn't even have to worry so much about them posting on social media or any of the other bullshit that people worry about with women. He doesn't have to worry about her. He knows if he dates a guy, they'll make good money because it's a man, that he'll always be able to take care of him and provide for him. He'll be able to give them flowers and chocolate on Valentine's Day. Brian may actually just be gay. I don't think he can handle it. It's not an insult. It's just observation.
Number 2, boundaries.
Feed her better.
Boundaries, I believe, are my strongest argument. Now, boundaries, men are allowed to have sexual boundaries, just like women
I
are.
don't think so.
No, you fucking rapist.
No, I don't think so.
This girl, she's fucking forcing guys down there. You better fucking, okay. No is a complete sentence. Now, I don't think men or women should be shamed or pressured into this pressured into doing things sexually they don't want to do. Okay.
This guy.
But that's not a reason to not go down on women, because it's not like women are forcing you to. Like, if you say, nah, I'm good, then it's not like that's not a reason, that's more of a conversation about consent, which is not what is being argued here. What's being argued here is the reasons why you don't, but you're trying to use it as a way to just simply say, well, because I'm saying no, and that has to be respected. But you are the host of a debate. You're debating all these women. So just simply saying no isn't enough. You have to explain why. This isn't a conversation about consent. It's about why.
Hey, consent, if you don't want to lick a woman where she pees, bleeds, discharges, that's a perfectly reasonable boundary
pee
to have.
And discharge too.
Wait, but that's
Right.
that's the reason before having sexual sex, you clean before.
Just take it. What if she showers?
That gets me to one of my other things.
Okay.
Then you don't get all the juices.
So here's my position on this, right? So if I go in the shower and I soap down or whatever, by the way, you women can't really soap down there.
I love how he's telling them how much they can clean themselves. He's saying, by the way, you women, you can't really clean down there that much. So, it's a little scary. Like, as if man, Brian is so envious of women. It's crazy. Like, he has never showered with a woman. He has never looked at a little picture book. He has never went to sex ed. He has not. I don't understand. He's beyond his own logic at this point. He needs help.
Wait,
what? The outside.
Wait,
shouldn't be.
You shouldn't soap into
Certain soap.
internally. You can't.
No.
Right?
Inside,
You can't douche. You shouldn't douche. It's not recommended, right?
Yeah.
So you got to resort to at least for the internal parts. It's going to just self-cleaning, right? It does self-clean. Are you a doucher? You're not supposed to douche, right?
You're still supposed to rinse it.
Well, the
Not the
external,
inside.
the external
inside.
parts,
Our
right?
Don't
The
be throwing
external-
water up there.
We're not. up there.
Right. But the external parts,
Yeah. I mean,
you know, you can. I don't even. Are you really even supposed to like soap?
Yes.
Soap. I mean.
You wash
yes,
it
with
outside.
soap, with
Like the-
with gentle
Yeah.
soap,
But I feel the
gentle
soap, the soap would kind of find its way
Well,
in.
how do you think girls like
No,
put shaving cream and
no.
shave there? Do you think you could just instantly
Well,
get an
you-
infection because it's there?
Well, shaving cream
There's
is
like there's a
hair
space.
doesn't
There's
grow.
space. There's
hair
space.
grows on the outer labia.
Oh, you want to get technical
It
with
goes
the hair
on the
growth?
inside.
Yeah, it
It goes
does.
on the
Yeah, it
inside.
does.
Want to get
Inside.
technical
Inside of
with
the
the hair
vagina.
growth?
No. Hold on.
It does go in.
So okay, this
Hair-
lips
hair-
are like
no, no.
this, and then it'll
Hair
like
grows
right
on
here.
the
too.
outer labia. I mean, I guess it's possible fucking hair could grow on the.
It goes in.
Okay, if these are the labias, you
I do love this whole segment where he is very adamant about explaining to them how a vagina works. Like, there's not multiple vaginas sitting around him. Like, I remember hearing this the first time. I'm thinking to myself, I'm like, how are you arguing with them about what a vagina is capable of? It makes no sense. I'm not even fully sure if I understand what my penis is capable of. Fuck.
have the two right here growing, and then like here
No,
you
no,
have
no, no,
hair
no.
right
Wait,
here.
no, hair does not grow on the internal.
There's a
inner
bunch of
labia.
women right here that all shave wax,
up there,
whatever,
but
Hold on.
telling you that
the
grows
outer
there.
part, even
Wait,
the
Nick,
part
are you? Yes, it does, or am I right? No, I think you're wrong. Nick,
Slammed. Immediately slammed. I think you're wrong. And, you know, that's a great spot to end this part because holy fuck. I think you're wrong. Great. Cool. Now you've told you're wrong by not just how many women? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 women, but now also 2 different dudes. You're wrong, Brian. Shut the fuck up. You have a list for no reason. You have a list for no reason. It's stupid. It's stupid. I think we're going to move on. So let's just get ready for the next section, which is just something more. And I'm sorry. Yeah.
I believe you should be honest
Still.
with kids at any age. You may
Jesus.
tell them the story differently and more simply, but I don't think you should tell them untruths, whether it's about Columbus or about George Washington. The heroes are military heroes. When you look at the statues on city squares are the statues of military heroes, you see. And I think we ought to examine that premise that our great heroes are military heroes in war and look at other heroes. Young people want icons and they want people they can admire and respect and look up to. And so military heroes fill the bill. But there are other heroes that young people can look up to. And they can look up people who are against war. They can have Mark Twain as a hero who spoke out against the Philippines War. They can have Helen Keller as a hero who spoke out against World War I, and Emma Goldman as a hero. They can have Fannie Lou Hamer as a hero, and Bob.
You want to know who my hero is? Real talk. My hero? I got two heroes, okay? First one, Robert McKee. Why? Because he wrote the book Story. And that book is a supercharged book about how stories work to the essence of their being. And every time I read it, I get a little bit more power, like in Dragon Ball. And I actually feel myself getting stronger. So that man is a hero to me. And also Joseph Campbell, because he knows everything there ever was, God rest his soul, about mythology and myths and the power of it and how it's integrated into the stories that we tell and the lives that we live. And it's one of the most, these are two of the most influential people in how I choose to interpret the world around me. So if I had to pick like two heroes legitimately, I would say those two. Yeah.
So I think there are ways of satisfying the young people's need for icons, for models, for people who protested and people who fought for equality and justice and won. I can't think of anything more important we can do in education than to get students to challenge these fundamental premises which keep us inside a certain box. And we want people to think outside of that, because if they don't, things will never change. If they don't think outside that box, if they don't challenge the premises, then we'll go on as we have been going on, and then we'll have the kind of world that we have had so far, which is not good enough, right? A world of war and hunger and disease and inequality and racism and sexism. We don't know. We want to move away from that, and so we have to re-examine, these premises.
It's crazy to imagine that us as people in America, we don't recognize that we are at war, it doesn't affect us the same way it used to back in the day, I'd imagine. Like when you find out there's World War I happening or whatever, and people in the societies of whatever part of the country are reacting to that in their day-to-day lives. And I'm like, here we have people literally dying on ships, being blown up and all these things. And we have some people that are upset by it. Yes. But, we all still go about our day. We all still clock in for work. We all still buy our groceries. We all still take our kids to school. We all still drive our cars. We all still do these things, We all try to live in normalcy, knowing that all these horrible things are happening. And I was listening to the Breakfast Club, and people are upset. There was this lady who called on the phone. She was really upset, yelling and saying like people are going to start coming for celebrities because they're not doing anything with their money, their power, whatever. And, I'm like, it's crazy because this is the response to the way things are going, And I wonder if when you look at history, I'm like, is this what they want? Because the reality is it's not the same as it was back then. People are not going to respond to this stuff the way they did back then. We're not going to have a revolution in the same way because time is different. So to me, it's scary because you don't really understand or know what people are going to do when they've had their limit. Not just like a few 50. I mean, everyone, when things actually do just fall apart. And it's like, why would you want that as a government? Your people are all mixed up right now, confused, angry at each other, and you don't see a problem with that. You don't see an issue in that. And it's weird. It's weird that we have to all go about our days as if there aren't issues that we are all suffering from due to the hands of these governments, and that we can't do anything about it. And I'm like that. So reading this book and understanding, reaffirming and understanding how history has worked and always worked will really help put things into perspective about what we're doing and how we're moving. Because I don't know what to do about, I can't do anything about the government, but I'm like, there has to be something we can do as a society aside from doing the votes and doing our part in that part. But it gets to a point to where I don't think that's enough. I think as a people, something is we're all missing something. And I think it's a fundamental need at this point. Jamestown. Hold on. I didn't mute anything. Okay. Jamestown. Now, if you don't know about Jamestown, which to be honest, I didn't know much about Jamestown. We're going to learn a little bit about Jamestown. And I'm telling you, I don't know how you learn about this in high school and you forget about it. This is the problem. I thought, let's just listen to Jamestown.
Shortly afterwards was gone. There is not a country in world history in which racism has been more important for so long a time as the United States. And the problem of the color line, as W.E.B. Du Bois put it, is still with us. So it is more than a purely historical question to ask, how does it start? And an even more urgent question, how might it end? Or, to put it differently, is it possible for whites and blacks to live together without hatred?
That's a good question. Honestly, I don't know. I think yes is the ideal answer. But it's like the more you learn, the more you come to understand that history, as it was told by it wasn't even just that they're victors, but they won by being petty, manipulative, uncaring, and just not even through like honorable means. You know what I'm saying? Like that's what I think is what makes it difficult to be like, yeah, we can, because the more you learn, the more it's like there's no way, because that's just simply wrong to find out about when you find these things out, you know. I don't even know if I could really show a picture of Jamestown. This shit is crazy, man. This shit is this one looks safe. Bro, there is some crazy images here. Like I don't even know what I'm fully looking at. Oh man, I'm gonna just play the thing.
If history can help answer these questions, then the beginnings of slavery in North America, a continent where we can trace the coming of the first whites and the first blacks, might supply at least a few clues. Some historians think those first blacks in Virginia were considered as servants, like the white indentured servants brought from Europe. But the strong probability is that even if they were listed as servants, a more familiar category to the English, they were viewed as being different from white servants, were treated differently, and in fact were slaves. In any case, slavery developed quickly into a regular institution, into the normal labor relation of blacks to whites in the New World. With it developed that special racial feeling, whether hatred or contempt or pity or patronization, that accompanied the inferior position of blacks in America for the next 350 years. That combination of inferior status and derogatory thought we call racism.
So it's like at this point, you come to understand that, like, even on that level of being equal, even on the servant level, we were still seen as lesser than. And I always think about that word contempt, where it's like, you know, it makes you wonder, like, there has to be, it makes me concerned, like, this is this how white people feel in general, this level of contempt towards black people? And I'm like, I know there are not white people that do believe that, but I'm like, it's an unsettling thought to even have to deal with. Is what's stressful, you know, like, why are we viewed so bad in your eyes? And it's not even that because we are bad or inferior. It's just simply because, in my opinion, at least in the time in which this history took place, they had small penises, these European people, and they felt insecure about their ability to be successful. Because every time they conquer someone, it's not even because they're actually better. It's just simply that they have better weapons and or simply got everybody sick. So they, like, you know, they spread their snot everywhere, or if not, their bullets. What of that passes down to the current population?
Everything in the experience of the first white settlers acted as a pressure for the enslavement of blacks. The Virginians of 1619 were desperate for labor, to grow enough food to stay alive. Among them were survivors from the winter of 1609 to 1610, the starving time, when, crazed for want of food, they roamed the woods for nuts and berries, dug up graves to eat the corpses, and died in batches until 500 colonists were reduced to 60.
Europeans that came across, you know, they weren't skilled at surviving. They were skilled at paperwork, you know. They weren't skilled at being farmers and things like that. So they had no capacity to actually feed themselves, you know. That's pretty much what happened.
The first settlement had 100 persons who had one small ladle of barley per meal. When more people arrived, there was even less food. Many of the people lived in cave-like holes dug into the ground, and in the winter of 1609 to 1610, they were driven through insufferable hunger to eat those things which nature most abhorred, the flesh and excrements of man, as well as of our own nation, as of an Indian, digged by some out of his grave after he had lain buried 3 days, and wholly devoured him. Others, envying the better state of body of any whom hunger has not yet so much wasted as their own, lay wait and threatened to kill and eat them. One among them slew his wife as she slept in his bosom, cut her in pieces, salt her, and fed upon her, till he had clean devoured all parts, saving her head.
So that's Jamestown, you know? And I'm like, I remember the name Jamestown in high school. How in the hell did I just sleep on that? Cannibalism, even in college. I'm like, I don't remember learning about Jamestown being this. I just remember the name. But, you know, it is important to understand that Jamestown, what happened to Jamestown, and how that led to things like them using Black people as slaves to work as labor, because the book's going to get into why and how it got to that point. But like I said, it's because these people didn't know how to grow food. You know, the Native Americans did, the indigenous people did. They were really good at it. You know, we Black people, Asian people, a lot of people were really good at agriculture, are really good at agriculture. Europeans, not so much, you know. They they can't. And these are the people in these colonies at this time.
A petition by 30 colonists to the House of Burgesses complaining against the 12-year governorship of Sir Thomas Smith said, "In those 12 years of Sir Thomas Smith, his government, we aver that the colony, for the most part, remained in great want and misery under most severe and cruel laws. The allowance in those times for a man was only 8 ounces of meal and half a pint of peas for a day. Mouldy, rotten, full of cobwebs and maggots, loathsome to man, and not fit for beasts, which forced many to flee for relief to the savage enemy, who being taken again were put to sundry deaths as by hanging, shooting, and breaking upon the wheel, of whom one for stealing 2 or 3 pints of oatmeal had a bodkin thrust through his tongue and was tied with a chain to a tree until he starved. The Virginians needed labor to grow corn for subsistence, to grow tobacco for export. They had just figured out how to grow tobacco, and in 1617 they sent off the first cargo to England. Finding that, like all pleasurable drugs tainted with moral disapproval, it brought a high price, the planters, despite their high religious talk, were not going to ask questions about something so profitable. They couldn't force Indians to work for them, as Columbus had done. They were outnumbered, and while with superior firearms they could massacre Indians, they would face massacre in return. They could not capture them and keep them enslaved. The Indians were tough, resourceful, defiant, and at home in these woods, as the transplanted Englishmen were not. White servants had not yet been brought over in sufficient quantity. Besides, they did not come out of slavery, and did not have to do more than contract their labor for a few years to get their passage and to start in the New World. As for the free white settlers, many of them were skilled craftsmen, or even men of leisure back in England, who were so little inclined to work the land that John Smith in those early years had to declare a kind of martial law, organize them into work gangs, and force them into the fields for survival. There may have been a kind of frustrated rage at their own ineptitude, at the Indian superiority at taking care of themselves, that made the Virginians especially ready to become the masters of slaves.
So, you know, like, this is what happened at the end of the day. They couldn't figure it out. And they couldn't force Native Americans because it would end in a slaughter on both ends. And also the Native Americans, you know, had a home team advantage because they know the land better. And so they're like, oh, I guess we're going to use Black people because they're already, you know, they've already been slaves. So we might as well just make it official. You know, I feel like if I was a white dude, right? It makes white people seem like a bunch of like babies and pussies and weak people, because if we take it all as fact, then the fact of the matter is Europeans were basically useless. You know, they had all the brain, but none of the skill. And it showed from every other culture and ethnicity that it's not just being literary intelligent or being able to craft things. It's more so about if you can sustain life. History just shows that Europeans can't really sustain life without violence, or for whatever reason, it's more important for them to only sustain their life instead of the life of everyone. As a white dude, I wouldn't imagine how to feel. As a Black person, I feel pretty irritated because it's like, You were useless, so you forced us into doing something, and then we didn't even get the food, most likely, So, Virginia, this is probably where the cannibalism started. Jamestown, like, the Virginian movies, Wrong Turn. I'm telling you.
If you were a colonist, you knew that your technology was superior to the Indians. You knew that you were civilized and they were savages. But your superior technology had proved insufficient to extract anything. The Indians, keeping to themselves, laughed at your superior methods and lived from the land more abundantly and with less labor than you did. And when your own people started deserting in order to live with them, it was too much. So you killed the Indians, tortured them, burned their villages, burned their cornfields. It proved your superiority in spite of your failures. And you gave similar treatment to any of your own people who succumbed to their savage ways of life.
They got petty and upset.
But you still did not grow much corn.
Did all that killing and still couldn't grow any corn. That's what's sad, Like, you just pity them at this point, because it's like you did all that killing to make a point that you have guns. That's great, but you don't know how to shovel. So I mean, that gun is you don't have any like spades or hoes, or you don't even know what I'm talking about. That's what's even crazier. I would be confused if I was a Native American. I'm like, how are you guys even alive? What is going on? I'd be confused. Like, are you man-made? What is this?
And it was natural to consider imported blacks as slaves, even if the institution of slavery would not be regularized and legalized for several decades. Because by 1619, 1 million blacks had already been brought from Africa to South America and the Caribbean.
1 million, bro. 1 million? 1 million.
Caribbean to the Portuguese and Spanish colonies to work as slaves. 50 years before Columbus, the Portuguese took 10 African blacks to Lisbon. This was the start of a regular trade in slaves. African blacks had been stamped as slave labor for 100 years. So it would have been strange if those 20 blacks, forcibly transported to Jamestown and sold as objects to settlers anxious for a steadfast source of labor, were considered as anything but slaves. Their helplessness made enslavement easier.
This is the part that's a little bit even more so difficult to like deal with, because it is a helpless situation. You are out of your own home. You are out of your own continent. You are out of your own element. You can't run anywhere. What do? It is a very unsettling thing to imagine. And I pity the bad guys.
Were on their own land. The whites were in their own European culture. The blacks had been torn from their land and culture, forced into a situation where the heritage of language, dress, custom, family relations was bit by bit obliterated, except for the remnants that blacks could hold on to by sheer extraordinary persistence. Was their culture inferior and so subject to easy destruction?
Not even a little bit.
Inferior in military capability, yes. Vulnerable to whites with guns and ships. But in no other way, except that cultures that are different are often taken as inferior, especially when such a judgment is practical and profitable. Even militarily, while the Westerners could secure forts on the African coast, they were unable to subdue the interior and had to come to terms with its chiefs. The African civilization was as advanced in its own way as that of Europe. In certain ways it was more admirable, but it also included cruelties, hierarchical privilege, and the readiness to sacrifice human lives for religion or profit. It was a civilization of 100 million people, using iron implements and skilled in farming. It had large urban centers and remarkable achievements in weaving, ceramics, sculpture. European travelers in the 16th century were impressed with the African kingdoms of Timbuktu and Mali, already stable and organized at a time when European states were just beginning to develop into the modern nation. In 1563, Ramusio, secretary to the rulers in Venice, wrote to the Italian merchants, "Let them go and do business with the king of Timbuktu and Mali."
Europeans were literally just the losers of the genetic race, of the human race at the end of the day. And I'm not even saying that to just be like spiteful or anything. I'm just like, it just seems like that was fact. Like we already had civilization going on. People already had things going on for themselves more so than they did. And every time they tried to do it, they started eating each other. Like, you know, to me, that might be a mental disorder. I don't know. Because it seems like everybody else got their shit together except for them. Like they just did it all wrong, you know? There has to be a reason for it. There has to be a reason for it.
The towns seemeth to be very... But African feudalism did not come, as did Europe's, out of the slave societies of Greece and Rome, which had destroyed ancient tribal life. In Africa, tribal life was still powerful, and some of its better features, a communal spirit, more kindness in law and punishment, still existed. And because the lords did not have the weapons that European lords had, they could not command obedience as easily. In his book, The African Slave Trade, Basil Davidson contrasts law in the Congo in the early 16th century with law in Portugal and England. In those European countries, where the idea of private property was becoming powerful, theft was punished brutally. In England, even as late as 1740, a child could be hanged for stealing a rag of cotton.
Jesus.
But in the Congo, communal life persisted. The idea of private property was a strange one, and thefts were punished with fines or various degrees of servitude.
That's crazy. So you're saying they had a system in which you didn't have, like, you know what's crazy? How, like, these are the things that Brian literally debated, and there it turns out, like, these are things that people actually did. They didn't have jails. They didn't have people committing crimes. They didn't have people doing these things because for the most part, these societies all understood the way in which they wanted to live. So there was no need to do that, you know, that we can never go back to what it was or what was there, you know, or maybe they just won't allow people. They won't allow it. They won't want to.
Portuguese leader told of the Portuguese legal codes, asked a Portuguese once, teasingly, "What is the penalty in Portugal for anyone who puts his feet on the ground?" Slavery existed in the African states, and it was sometimes used by Europeans to justify their own slave trade. One slave trader, John Newton, who later became an anti-slavery leader, wrote about the people of what is now Sierra Leone. The state of slavery among these wild, barbarous people, as we esteem them, is much milder than in our colonies. For as, on the one hand, they have no land in high cultivation, like our West India plantations, and therefore no call for that excessive, unintermitted labor which exhausts our slaves, so, on the other hand, no man is permitted to draw blood even from a slave. African slavery is hardly to be praised, but it was far different from plantation or mining slavery in the Americas, which was lifelong, morally crippling, destructive of family ties, without hope of any future.
I feel like as a white person, you gotta feel a little butthurt when you find out, like, even we did slavery better than you did. Like, that's what's crazy. Like, you know, even on the worst of it, we still did it better than you. We still treated them with some level of, like, of existence, you know? So it's like, this is only chapter 2 of this fucking book, but, like, you know, what are they going to be like to me? And I'm always trying to remember, like, at the end of the day, the people of today are not the people of history, not typically, you know? And I don't think most people are able to really even comprehend history at this point. I don't think I can at this point, you know? Time is weird. That's what I will say. Time is weird.
Slavery lacked two elements that made American slavery the most cruel form of slavery in history: the frenzy for limitless profit that comes with capitalistic agriculture, the reduction of the slave to less than human status by the use of racial hatred, with that relentless clarity based on color, where white was master, black was slave. In fact, it was because they came from a settled culture of tribal customs and family ties, of communal life and traditional ritual, that African blacks found themselves especially helpless when removed from this. They were captured in the interior, frequently by blacks caught up in the slave trade themselves, sold on the coast, then shoved into pens with blacks of other tribes, often speaking different languages. The conditions of capture and sale were crushing affirmations to the black African of his helplessness in the face of superior force. The marches to the coast, sometimes for 1,000 miles, with people shackled around the neck under whip and gun, were death marches in which 2 of every 5 blacks died. On the coast they were kept in cages until they were picked and sold. One John Barboat, at the end of the 17th century, described these cages on the Gold Coast. As the slaves come down to Fida from the inland country, they are put into a booth or prison. Near the beach, and when the Europeans are to receive them, they are brought out onto a large plain, where the ship's surgeons examine every part of every one of them, to the smallest member, men and women being stark naked. Such as are allowed good and sound are set on one side, marked on the breast with a red-hot iron, imprinting the mark of the French, English, or Dutch companies. The branded slaves after this are returned to their former booths, where they await shipment, sometimes 10 to 15 days.
What I was thinking about on my walk, I was like, I don't think children can learn about history. Like, I feel like it's hard for children to try and learn about history. Like, again, in high school, how do you process this information? Some of this stuff gets over your head. And as an adult now, I'm like, I can process these things a little bit differently and kind of take the information in, But even then, I'm like, I think it is, I think it's always hard to understand that this is something that the difference between this and something like the Holocaust is like, I feel like you still have people alive from the Holocaust that can tell you and show you like the scars and the things. And, for things like this, it's been going on for so long, like 400, 500 years, and you can only imagine those beginning years probably being some of the worst of it. So I feel like all of it is bad. I don't even know if there is a worst of it. I think it'll probably all be bad. Like it doesn't get, it just continues. So I'm like that. For that long that's longer than so many people's lifetime. That's like hopeless is a word, but I think this was an actual reality of hopelessness, and I don't understand how you keep going. And I think about this all the time because I'm like, as a black person, it would have to, I think it's safe to assume that, you go far back enough, someone in my lineage, people in my family lineage and all black people's lineage of today that's still alive, whatever, were in these situations and somehow lived, So it's like, I think the thing that scares some white people, I guess, in power is if you can understand that, right, genetically, what's been passed down is the ability to survive, adapt, etc. Because otherwise we wouldn't have been here. At least that's as far as I want to understand it. At that point, I could see why you would be worried about me, why you would cross the street, because you don't know what I could do. You don't know what I'm capable of. Our people have been through quite a bit, I'm not going to do anything to anybody. Right? Like most people would never want to hurt another person in general, but I could understand that fear a little bit because I'm like, yeah, if we survive 500 years of this crap.
Slave ships,
yeah,
in spaces not much bigger than coffins, chained together in the dark, wet slime of the ship's bottom, choking in the stench of their own excrement. Documents of the time describe the conditions. The height, sometimes between decks, was only 18 inches, so that the unfortunate human beings could not turn around or even on their sides, the elevation being less than the breadth of their shoulders, and here they are usually chained to the decks by the neck and legs. In such a place, the sense of misery and suffocation is so great that the Negroes are driven to frenzy. On one occasion, hearing a great noise from below decks where the blacks were chained together, the sailors opened the hatches and found the slaves in different stages of suffocation, many dead, some having killed others in desperate attempts to breathe. Slaves often jumped overboard to drown rather than continue their suffering. To one observer, a slave deck was so covered with blood and mucus that it resembled a slaughterhouse. Under these conditions, perhaps one of every 3 blacks transported overseas died. But the huge profits, often double the investment on one trip, made it worthwhile for the slave trader, and so the blacks were packed into the holds like fish. First the Dutch, then the English dominated the slave trade. By 1795, Liverpool had more than 100 ships carrying slaves and accounted for half of all the European slave trade. Some Americans in New England entered the business, and in 1637 the first American slave ship, the Desire, sailed from Marblehead. Its holds were partitioned into racks, 2 feet by 6 feet, with leg irons and bars. By 1800, 10 to 15 million blacks had been transported as slaves to the Americas, representing perhaps 1/3 of those originally seized in Africa. It is roughly estimated that Africa lost 50 million human beings to death in slavery in those centuries we call the beginnings of modern Western civilization, at the hands of slave traders and plantation owners in Western Europe and America, the countries deemed the most advanced in the world.
Boy, the slave deck stuff is usually the stuff that's honestly usually just kind of hard to like for me to understand. Like I've seen pictures, and it really is something that it's one of those things to me. It's like I think everybody, you see like what a news how that happens and how that works, and you think that changes you, and then the more you find out like, oh, I never thought I could be more changed and stuff like that. The slave deck and things like that is more unsettling than you could actually imagine. So again, I always think about that because I'm like, we are. I am here as a black man, so that means there is multiple someones probably who have gone through this, and then so you have to think about like where we are now as a black people, and if what they've gone through is what we have now enough, and I think the answer is always going to be no, because you have people in slave decks, and you kept doing it because it was more profitable to keep treating people like products than to do something else, something more humane, better, anything, so I always think about this because I'm like, and then you can't really talk about stuff like reparations because I'm like, there is nothing you can do that can equate to that. 50 million Africans died. That's not even how many were taken. That's just how many died. I genuinely can't like try and imagine what that looks like other than like complete overtaking. I don't understand. Come on.
In the year 1610, a Catholic priest in the Americas named Father Sandoval wrote back to the church functionary in Europe to ask if the capture, transport, and enslavement of African blacks was legal by church doctrine. A letter dated March 12, 1610, from Brother Louis Brandion to Father Sandoval gives the answer. Your Reverence writes me that you would like to know whether the Negroes who are sent to your parts have been legally captured. To this I reply that I think your Reverence should have no...
How do you legally capture black people? You tell me that. How do you legally capture black people? What does that mean, legally? This is the terms and things that they do these things in. So when we talk about laws and things like that, laws are only made to keep people in place and to ensure that people can get away with doing certain things. Like, what do you mean legally capture these Negroes? Like, what's an illegal capture?
This point, because this is a matter which has been questioned by the Board of Conscience in Lisbon, and all its members are learned and conscientious men. Nor did the bishops, who are in Sao Tome, Cape Verde, and here in Loando, all learned and virtuous men, find fault with it. We have been here ourselves for 40 years, and there have been among us very learned fathers. Never did they consider the trade as illicit. Therefore, we and the fathers of Brazil buy these slaves for our service without any scruple.
I don't know.
With all of this, the desperation of the Jamestown settlers for labor, the impossibility of using Indians and the difficulty of using whites, the availability of blacks offered in greater and greater numbers by profit-seeking dealers in human flesh, and with such blacks possible to control because they had just gone through an ordeal which, if it did not kill them, must have left them in a state of psychic and physical helplessness.
I'd imagine.
Is it any wonder that such blacks were ripe for enslavement?
It's probably why I'm so fucking insane today. You know what I'm saying? Like, I'm telling, like, genetically, this stuff has to pass down. I mean, we talk about trauma. Yeah, I'm sure we got plenty of that. But I mean, psychologically, bro, you definitely passing that shit down. Like, ooh. Imagine that's how you were brought over. And that was just the beginning. That was just the beginning of your fight for survival. I don't know how these how they were able to have sex. How am I even here? Sperm must have been fucking Superman charged or something, because there's no way the body can endure so many things. 500 years,
Reports. The available sources on slavery in 18th century Virginia, plantation and county records, the newspaper advertisements for runaways, describe rebellious slaves and few others. The slaves described were lazy and thieving. They feigned illnesses, destroyed crops, stores, tools, and sometimes attacked or killed overseers. They operated black markets and stolen goods. Runaways were defined as various types. There were truants, who usually returned voluntarily, outlaws, and slaves who were actually fugitives, men who visited relatives, went to town to pass as free, or tried to escape slavery completely, either by boarding ships and leaving the colony, or banding together in cooperative efforts to establish villages or hideouts in the frontier. The commitment of another type of rebellious slave was total. These men became killers, arsonists, and insurrectionists. Slaves recently from Africa, still holding on to the heritage of their communal society, would run away in groups and try to establish villages of runaways out in the wilderness on the frontier. Slaves born in America, on the other hand, were more likely to run off alone, and with the skills they had learned on the plantation, try to pass as freemen. Slavery was immensely profitable to some masters. James Madison told a British visitor shortly after the American Revolution that he could make $257 on every Negro in a year and spend only $12 or $13 on his keep. Another viewpoint was of slave owner Landon Carter, writing about 50 years earlier, complaining that his slaves so neglected their work and were so uncooperative, either cannot or will not work, that he began to wonder if keeping them was worthwhile. Some historians have painted a picture, based on the infrequency of organized rebellions and the ability of the South to maintain slavery for 200 years, of a slave population made submissive by their condition. With their African heritage destroyed, they were, as Stanley Elkins said, made into Sambos, a society of helpless dependence. In 1710, warning the Virginia Assembly, Governor Alexander Spotswood said, Freedom wears a cap which can, without a tongue, call together all those who long to shake off the fetters of slavery, and as such, an insurrection would surely be attended with most dreadful consequences. So I think we cannot be too early in providing against it, both by putting ourselves in a better posture of defense, and by making a law to prevent the consultations of those Negroes. Indeed, considering the harshness of punishment for running away, that so many blacks did run away, must be a sign of a powerful rebelliousness.
Right.
All through the 1700s, the Virginia Slave Code read, "Whereas many times slaves run away and lie hid and lurking in swamps, woods, and other obscure places, killing hogs and committing other injuries to the inhabitants, if the slave does not immediately return, anyone whatsoever may kill or destroy such slaves by such ways and means as he shall think fit."
What? Yo, that's crazy. He said if you find any slave that has ran away, you can kill him any way you want. That's crazy. He said you can any way that you see fit. Yo, that's so traumatic. That's crazy. They got so upset at people running away from captivity. Oh man, that they made so many strict laws and people still kept running away. And so then you had to just make the slave law and just basically say, yo, if you catch a runaway slave, you can kill them. You can kill them, not capture or return or report, kill by any means, because they're killing hogs and damaging inhabitants. How do you say these things? How do you write these things knowing that you literally came to this land and tried to kill all the indigenous people, failed at even a point in time to where you couldn't even attack them, bro? You just had to let them be. And then you make this law in which you claim black people are killing the inhabitants of this land as if that's been an issue that you care about. What the fuck, man? Oy. I get
If
it.
the slave
I
is
get it.
apprehended, it shall be lawful for the county court to order such punishment for the said slave, either by dismembering or in any other way, as they in their discretion shall think fit.
Describing us like fucking vampires or something. You can dismember them or what in any other way, any way that you see fit. Mutilation, hey, if you don't got a wooden stake, you're gonna have to chop them up. Like, what are you? These are people. What the fuck, man? It's not even like a bounty where it's like dead or alive, you get $500,000 or something. You can just kill them, eat them if you want. Fuck, we struggling in Jamestown still because all our slaves keep running away. Eat them. If you catch them, eat them. You probably ate a hog. Oh man, Jamestown.
In the early years of slavery, especially before racism as a way of thinking was firmly ingrained, while white indentured servants were often treated as badly as black slaves, there was a possibility of cooperation. As Edmund Morgan sees it, there are hints that the two despised groups initially saw each other as sharing the same predicament. It was common, for example, for servants and slaves to run away together, steal hogs together, get drunk together. It was not uncommon for them to make love together. In Bacon's rebellion, one of the last groups to surrender was a mixed band of 80 Negroes and 20 English servants. As Morgan says, masters, initially at least, perceived slaves in much the same way they had always perceived servants: shiftless, irresponsible, unfaithful, ungrateful, dishonest. And if freemen with disappointed hopes should make common cause with slaves of desperate hope, the results might be worse than anything Bacon had done. And so measures were taken. about the same time that slave codes involving discipline and punishment were passed by the Virginia Assembly. Virginia's ruling class, having proclaimed that all white men were superior to black, went on to offer their social, but white, inferiors a number of benefits previously denied them. In 1705, a law was passed requiring masters to provide white servants whose indenture time was up with 10 bushels of corn, 30 shillings, and a gun, while women servants were to get 15 bushels of corn and 40 shillings. Also,
They don't get a
newly
gun,
freed
though.
servants were to get 50 acres of land. Morgan concludes, once the small planter felt less exploited by taxation and began to prosper a little, he became less turbulent, less dangerous, more respectable. He could begin to see his big neighbor not as an extortionist, but as a powerful protector of their common interests. We see now a complex web of historical threads to ensnare blacks for slavery in America. The desperation of starving settlers, the special helplessness of the displaced African, the powerful incentive of profit for slave trader and planter, the temptation of superior status for poor whites, the elaborate controls against escape and rebellion, the legal and social punishment of black and white collaboration. The point is that the elements of this web are historical, not natural. This does not mean that they are easily disentangled, dismantled. It means only that there is a possibility for something else, under historical conditions not yet realized. Around 1700, the Virginia House of Burgesses declared, "The Christian servants in this country, for the most part, consists of the worser sort of the people of Europe. And since such numbers of Irish and other nations have been brought in, of which a great many have been soldiers in the late wars, that, according to our present circumstances, we can hardly govern them, and if they were fitted with arms and had the opportunity of meeting together by musters, we have just reason to fear as they may rise upon us." It was a kind of class consciousness, a class fear. There were things happening in early Virginia and in the other colonies to warrant it.
Let's take a look.
This is Star Talk. Neil deGrasse Tyson, your personal astrophysicist, and today it's special edition. And you know what that means? We've got Gary O'Reilly. Gary?
Hey, Neil.
Gary.
Man, former soccer pro.
Allegedly.
Chuck.
Yeah, man. What's
all right,
up,
man? Good.
My main
I'm
man,
loving these
Chuck.
special editions because what they all have in common is something about the human condition.
Yeah.
What it is to be human or what it is to no longer be human because a machine is going to replace our mind, body, and soul.
Imagine.
All of that is in special edition. Yeah. So today's topic, epigenetics and you. Gary, set
word.
the stage here.
Epigenetics. You know what I'm saying? Like, when I first heard this word, I actually had to, I know what it means, right? And I'm just going to let them explain it. Not because I forgot what it means, but because I'm no scientist. So.
Okay, plenty of great ideas start with a question, and podcasts for that matter, right? And that question would be, what if? So
That's always how it
using what
starts.
if the stresses and traumas experienced by your grandparents could affect your genetic makeup generations later.
I don't want that to be the case.
All right, hold that thought.
I already know that's the case.
Right?
You haven't met my grandparents. They wouldn't let me forget that their stresses and traumas actually are affecting.
So this is the discussion, right? How does the stresses and traumas of past generations affect the current generation, right? And I think what's really cool about this video is that the way that they go about it is, this is very much a talk about how things like slavery have impacted generations of Black people and African Americans. But the way it's also framed and discussed is under science through lab data and experimentation among different specimens of rats and things like that. But it's very much a way of a clear discussion about how history has affected the epigenetics of not just Black people, but I think of a lot of different races. And I think it is a worthwhile conversation to pay attention to because it's well done here. And I think that if it wasn't in the scientist discussion framework, you know, it'd be a historical framework and people would have a problem with it. But they do it really well here.
Verbal doubling down. But even though those stresses and traumas will have taken place long before you were conceived, yeah, we're back on an epigenetic trail, but this time our destination is transgenerational, not intergenerational. So it's transgenerational epigenetic inheritance. Yes, it's for real. It's a thing. And we may have found the sharpest blade at the cutting edge of epigenetic research.
Ooh.
So having said all of that, please, Neil, introduce our guest.
Are you saying we have a sharp blade sitting among us?
In a metaphoric way.
I'm going to let you know right now that the orderlies have said that that's not allowed.
Dr. Bianca Jones-Marlin, welcome to Star Talk.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, so you just right up the street here at Columbia University.
Yes.
Oh my
Bianca
gosh.
Martin.
At the Zuckerman Institute. What goes on at the Zuckerman Institute?
We study the mind, the brain, and the behavior of humans, of model organisms, and how the world works.
Can I add, what's a model organism?
Model organisms. There's like the ones that we really like that work really well for our genetic questions, like mice, flies, non-human primates, like rhesus macaque and monkeys. But we also have non-model organisms, like naked mole rat, for example, which are precious. Yes.
Naked mole rats.
Exactly.
That is a naked mole rat. Yeah, right? Okay. We got a little bit of context. That's a naked mole rat.
What's the difference between a naked mole rat and
a New York City rat? A lot. One's brilliant.
New York City rats
One will steal your wallet.
They're clothed. No,
You'll never see a naked mole rat with a piece of pizza in his mouth going down some stairs.
Facts.
Like,
I mean, if you did, though, imagine.
So what makes the mole rat a different category of animal to study?
Here we go.
Relative to the list you just gave.
Yes, it's because we're looking at model organisms because we have a question that can pretty much generalize amongst organisms. When you have a non-model organism, like my good friend, Dr. Ishmael Abdul-Sabor, who studies as naked mole rats at Columbia, he's looking at pain. And a cool thing about them, they don't feel pain. They don't feel pain. They also don't get cancer, and they live kind of forever.
So they're outside.
So that's what I thought was really cool. Naked mole rats don't get cancer, and they don't feel pain. And so I could imagine why in science you would want to like use these creatures as like ways to I imagine they're trying to figure out how to cure cancer via naked mole rats. Because if you can make people immune to cancer, right, or immune to the ability to get cancer or something like that, whatever, that's huge. And the fact that naked mole rats can't get cancer is kind of bizarre, right? They also can't feel pain. Don't know how that works. But if you can find a way to I don't think, if I'm not mistaken, that we want to be able to feel pain. Otherwise, it could be very dangerous. Like there are people who don't have like those nerve endings or something like that, who are born that way, and it's dangerous because they could get cut and not know it, or be bruised and not know it, or whatever. So I don't know about that part, but the cancer part, you know, we need to figure that out.
Out of the paradigm of what you're
Exactly.
investigating. I did not know that.
They're also precious, but it allows us to, you know, ask different questions that we can't ask in mice that die within 2 years.
Your background is in neuroscience as it specifically applies in these challenges. So first, let's just set the stage.
Yes.
We need to know what epigenetics is. And I know what an epicenter is. It is, you know, the part of the earth above, directly above where the earthquake took place.
Epidermis.
Okay, epidermis is the skin above all your body and organ. So
Right.
what is epigenetics? Is something sitting above your genes?
Perfect. On the nose.
Huge.
No, I don't want to be the one who explains it.
You did it so well.
Something that sits above.
I don't want to woman-splain you.
Epigenetics is something that sits above the genes. All right.
What you just said to me.
Oh, that's awesome.
I want you to women-splain me. Okay. No, what did I leave? Surely there's missing content there. Go.
Yes, and so our genetic code, this is our DNA, this stays the same. And the cool part, it's the same in every cell. Our genetic code is the same in every cell.
Huge.
But we have eye cells, we have liver cells. We don't have eye cells growing in our liver, hopefully, and vice versa.
That'd be
and this
crazy.
is because we have epigenetic markers, same as the epicenter and the epidermis. Epi means above. So epigenetics means above the genome. These are big proteins, big markers that sit on the genome, and they say, nope, don't read this part of the genome, or come read this part of the genome. And they change the way that DNA is wrapped around histones or sit in a space.
So it turns them on and off. Is that a way to?
yeah,
Can we think about it that way?
You can, yes, I think you can.
Sure.
So
Okay.
the expression of the gene
Expression,
itself
that's a better word. Expression.
is dependent upon the epigenetic determination.
How much is expressed and when it is expressed depends on the epigenetic environment.
So here we have
Okay.
transgenerational epigenetic inheritance. How does
That's
that get
heavy.
inherited?
So
Oh my
I
God.
guess in that sense, it's what he's saying, right? Is let me see if I can understand this. Epigenetics are proteins that sit on top of the genomes, right? And it helps determine when to be on, when to be off, how much, etc., based on previous conditions or exposures or whatever. I think is how I'm going to understand it, right?
Goodness, I mean, if we all knew how it got inherited like that quickly, I think you'd be addressing me in my Nobel Prize. But since we're not there yet, but there are questions surrounding
Promise
that.
here, when you get your Nobel Prize, you're coming back here on the show.
Yeah,
Okay,
exactly.
all right, Girl Scouts honor.
Huge.
Okay.
Part 2.
So there's many questions that are left unanswered when it comes to how transgenerational epigenetic inheritance works. I think we're at the space now in neuroscience where we are observing that intergenerational inheritance of an experience is pretty much canon now. We can say with my studies as well as others that an experience in a parent will change the way the offspring develop. And I'll be pretty specific with this.
Experience in a parent.
Experience in a parent.
Even before the child is conceived.
Exactly. Before the child is conceived. So not a pregnant model organism.
Because we heard that can be influenced.
You could envision a way. If you have a pregnant person that's pregnant with a female, the eggs of their granddaughter could be inside of them. So you're
That's
pretty much
crazy.
going to be talking to 3 generations in one space.
Okay, well, catch me up.
And I've heard of something like that a while back or something like that. Being able to talk to like 3 generations through one woman is kind of crazy. That's how science, when we really don't understand life, how in the fuck does something like that even work, right? Like you can influence a lot. And I think I think as a minority, as a Black person, whatever, you start to immediately connect this back to slavery and ancestral times because of what you've experienced, where it's like, okay, you're saying that you can affect them based on the parents' experience. Okay, so my parents maybe have been affected by their parents, may have been affected by their parents. And then, you go all the way back and you start to understand like, well, shit, 500 years is a lot,
Up on Bio 101.
That's a lot
So I
of
knew
epigenetics.
that a girl born has all the eggs she'll ever drop.
Yes.
But how does the egg that she drops have eggs?
Which means she has the genetics of her granddaughter, who will then make up the body and the eggs of the granddaughter inside of those eggs.
She got the
inside of the mom.
fractal, you know what I'm saying?
Basically
Like I do believe that fractal reality is a real thing. And I do think that the more you go into something, the more it starts to emulate what we already experience, and the more you go out of something, the more it starts to emulate what you zoomed out of. I do think these fractal things are a real reality in which we experience things on a molecular, if not atomic level or cellular level, maybe all of those levels. But I think this is evidence of that, right? Like if a woman can have the eggs of her daughter as well as the eggs of her granddaughter, that's a life within a life within a life, right? Before it's even possible for that life to even exist. And I'm like, that's insane.
Like a Russian
doll.
Okay.
That's crazy.
All right.
I got one. I got 2 Russian dolls here. Okay.
So
Pass me my Russian doll.
Oh, okay.
Oh, she's got a space station.
Whose office do you think you're in?
Why are you surprised?
Here in the Hayden Planetarium, Neil deGrasse Tyson's office.
Because it was a Russian doll. I turned around and expected to see, like, I don't know, like
yes,
a
this
babushka.
is
Hold on, give me
Space-
1 second here. I want to make sure something.
Station.
That's cool.
And inside there is Soyuz.
Soyuz.
Okay, so that's how they get there.
It works. Okay, so each of these is sort of a genetic expression within the previous one.
So is the
one
last
inside
one-
of there.
She wanted me to keep going. Okay.
The one inside of there. So let's say mom's space station had like stressful experience.
Yes.
Okay.
And then baby, what's on baby?
This is Soyuz.
Baby Soyuz.
Yes.
Yeah, baby Soyuz is probably going to be stressed, but baby Soyuz was there in the ether, right?
Okay.
Now we're
But
talking
then
about grandbaby. Who's grandbaby?
Okay, I don't know what this thing is.
Nor
it looks
do I.
sci-fi to me.
Okay.
So this is now grandchild.
That's
okay.
It sits well with it. And I
That's
don't
how
know.
messed up she
This
was
is
there,
way too transgenerational. We're not talking about great grandchildren. I don't know anything about this yet.
All right. So then the last one here, we're now 4 generations in.
Yeah.
And guess what that is?
Oh,
Sputnik.
Sputnik, yeah.
Sputnik.
Rewatched.
And it's Russian all the way through.
Oh, look at that. That's
so
a good one.
You're telling me that
You got a little globe spinning here. I didn't notice this. That's so cool. There's a little globe spinning here. It's cute.
some elements of all of our behavior is not our fault.
Ooh. I'm saying that in some model organisms.
She was like, ooh, so listen.
Because my kids are listening to this, okay?
Yeah.
Like, no, that's on you.
Wait,
okay?
let me not be so negative. Are you suggesting that some components of our character, personality, demeanor, and the like is traceable to forces that occurred outside of the lives we've lived?
What I'm saying is that in some model organisms, there's an experience that can happen in a parent that leads to epigenetic changes, that leads to changes in development of offspring. Now, we've demonstrated this in worms. My lab specifically looks at mice. When it comes to humans, the most studied topics surrounding intergenerational and transgenerational inheritance comes from after World War II, the Dutch hunger winter. So this is a period of time where the Netherlands were cut off from food, and it led to a man-made famine. So this is also, I think, something pretty particular. We're not talking about
anything about it.
Really?
Yeah, 1944 to 1945.
Yes.
Even
And
that
then
late in the war.
Then the generations were suffering from serious medical conditions of diabetes.
Hypertension, even schizophrenia, not just for the children. And we're speaking about young children who were starved, but were not pregnant. We're not procreating. We're starved. They went on to have children, who went on to have children, which is our generation now. Like the generation of these people are alive now. And what we observed is that what other studies have observed, this is not what my lab particularly does, is that there's an increase in hypertension, diabetes, schizophrenia. And I also think it's very particular to
You think the Dutch were black?
Yes, gonna go there.
I mean, because black people, we get diabetes, hypertension, schizophrenia. We got a lot of little issues. But yeah, you would think, I mean, maybe they are.
All right, I didn't mean it. Go.
This is a man-made famine. This is not something that's tracking with the environment in a way that all things are aligned. This is a man-made famine. So you can envision a space where you have a man-made famine, a man-made decrease in food, increase only in salted food because that's all you have access to.
Right.
And salt preserves food if you have it at all.
Yeah.
Plus a lot of stress, I would assume, if we're talking about the black population prior to the 1900s, and then introduce food deserts and access to low-quality food.
Just
we can
remind
envision
us
an epigenetic
what
space.
a food desert is.
Yeah, so a food desert is a common terminology that we use for a space in which there's not fresh food available in like a X block radius, like
It's
a
called a
walking
black
radius.
That's a food desert, okay?
It's a food desert.
You can get McDonald's
is-
before you can get broccoli.
Yeah. And so you start to see how these environments and these conditions are pretty consistent in a lot of things that we would like to call the ghettos or the hood or the projects or whatever, where we are in these environments, right? We are in these environments where there are food deserts. We are in these environments where we are in high stress. We are in these environments where we are succumbed to poor conditions, where we are forced to be violent to one another, forced to be in a level of survival, forced to be in a level of fear, forced to be in a level of hopelessness, right? And so you start to see how, as that happens year after year after generation, how that may affect one's epigenetics down the line, right? And I'm like, what I loved about this video at this point was like, they haven't directly said that, it's said in like these little jokes and things like that, which I love, but it's also like a very real reality that's always like talked about in books and within education, like papers and things like that, where these are very real conditions that are man-made, mind you, right? And she made it clear that these are man-made things, not things that are true for the environment. But when it's a man-made famine or a man-made condition that stresses out a population to this degree, their epigenetics change, and you'll start to see what happens and how those negative changes can impact that population.
Chuck has defined food desert.
So you've got this Dutch winter famine in 44, 45 as a real-time observation.
A data set.
Yeah.
Yep.
And I think it is possibly the only one that's been sadly created so far.
It is the best studied, and this is because the Netherlands took very clean note of who served in the military. So they started to see these these data come about. Now we know that there is a Chinese famine that took place. We, of course, can look at the Black American and Native American population and tie food deprivation with stress and look at and health outcomes. But this one is well studied in a short period of time.
If we take that and use that as a starting point,
yes,
your research at your Marlin lab.
What a coincidence. You work in a lab called the Marlin Lab.
Voila. I chose well. I heard the boss there is great. She's fab.
What a coincidence.
Exactly, yeah.
Yes, we spoke about the Dutch hunger winter and Black America. And our work is really motivated on how do we make tomorrow better than it is today? What does it mean to be a human in this space and in this place? Have experiences that are both positive but also negative. How that affects the way the brain develops, the body develops, how that affects offspring, interactions with offspring, and how does that affect, therefore, communities, which affect the world.
To me, that's like literally the best, what's the word, goal or vision for you to work under, right? It's literally like, how do we take everything that we understand about the world and ourselves and just simply create a better future? That's so crazy that there's a company out there that's basically what their mission statement is. And so to me, I'm like, oh, that's a great place to work. Like I've never heard that as someone's mission statement. So it makes me happy to know that there is scientists out there really doing that in terms of good things for the world,
That really is the heart of what we do in the Marlin Lab. And if you didn't get it, the Marlin Lab is my lab. That's my lab. That one.
Pretty cool.
Yes. And so I take my passion for figuring out how we can make tomorrow better than it is today and my love for science, biology, and neuroscience and bring this together. So although our mission is to aid the world in this way, we use model organisms such as mice and techniques such as studying epigenetic inheritance to get to this answer.
So how do you, if we're back to trauma, what are you sadly doing to mice to inflict trauma?
We're tying them up and we're electroshocking them. We're tying their little feet up, okay? And we're doing a little stretchy thing. Have you seen 1984? We're doing that, all right? That's what we're doing. We're recreating Big Brother.
How do you then balance that out to see how these changes take place?
Well, first we paint the mice black. That's the first thing we do.
The sad part is, oh gosh.
That's funny. That one gets me every time. Well, first thing we do is we're gonna paint the mouse black. All right. We gotta set the scene. All right.
Sadly doing to mice to inflict trauma.
Right. What are they doing to mice?
How do you then balance that out to see how these changes take place?
1984.
Well, first we paint the mice black.
Well, first we paint them black, then 1984. Yes.
That's the first thing we do.
The sad part is, oh gosh, they're called C57 Black 6. Those are the name of the mice. It's just like in the name. Every time we write it down, we're like black mouse. Yeah.
Black mouse.
But we treat them very well because we really want to see.
We will not allow them to get a mortgage in certain areas.
We do redline them.
They start redlining the cage. That'd be crazy.
Time for our first commercial break. Okay. We'll be back after we reset.
You cut off parts of the maze.
Oh, God.
That'd be wild. Could you train mice to experience redlining? Like you actually do cut off parts of the maze, bro. That'd be fucked up. You make mice. That's an epigenetic inheritance,
A maze with no exit, right? Yeah. Just stuff, just messing with you.
Yes, because we want to see what is the bare minimum that you could do to create an epigenetic change. We really try to do the bare minimum. And we also respect the fact that every mouse that is part of this experiment and experience is a mouse that we're asking them to dedicate their life to this experience. So we do take that very seriously.
Did she say she's asking them?
We do. Look, they have names after _Black 6. They have a name. We give them names.
Sure.
So,
okay.
Yeah.
There's Tyrone.
You're going to get me in trouble here, okay?
I am forbidden from saying anything right now.
You can't say anything. You can't say anything.
Malik is my favorite.
Letitia.
Guys, okay, I'm pulling it back.
Go ahead.
Y'all gonna get me in trouble. All right, so they pretty much have a pretty regular mouse life, right? They hang out in a cage, they get food, sometimes they get to have sex, they live their best life. This is what they do. So there's not many dynamic things happening in their life when they're here in the lab. What we do is we place them into a new chamber, so they haven't seen this chamber before. We then introduce an odor, a smell. This is a smell, it kind of smells like almond. It's called acetophenone. And we present acetaminophen for 10 seconds, and then it co-terminates with a light foot shock. We give them a light foot shock on their foot, and they jump back.
Okay.
But in a mouse who pretty much has had the best life of eating, drinking, and hanging out,
This is a terrible thing.
Yes.
Right. Yes.
It's like,
Right.
It's a big deal.
It's like, this is when they find out, oh my God, I'm black.
Right.
This is the moment.
When did you find out you were black?
Until
life was
One
great.
day I smelled almond. Yeah.
This moment,
Okay, all
I
right.
smell some almond. And I
Right.
got
So, and then what happens, right, inside the brain at that point is they smell almond and they get that shock. So they associate the two, right? And it's a even more stronger response when they've never experienced this before and everything up into their life has been relatively well. So now those two things are associated, right?
Foot shock,
Almonds
right? So
and
they're like,
shocks.
what is happening? This happens 5 times in a row.
Right.
5
And then we
times.
put them
Over what
back in the
period of
cage
time?
over the span of 10 minutes.
Oh, okay.
5 times
wow.
in 10 minutes.
We put them back in the cage. And we take them out the next day. We put them in the chamber. You could already tell they
Right.
a
Just
mouse
from their chamber itself. It
their
makes them
experience they do.
apprehensive.
Yes, they freeze. It's called freezing. Mice do two things. They'll either freeze or run away. Those are their two responses to stress. So they freeze when they get in. We have not given them the odor. They already know the room is already stressing them out. So then they get kind of chilled with the room, like, okay, nothing's happening. And then we turn on the odor and they freeze again.
Of
Right.
course.
And they're
Even before
waiting.
you shock them.
Right.
And they're counting down for the foot shock. And so they freeze,
Right.
freeze when they smell it, and then they jump because they get the foot shock.
Yeah, they get that,
We do
right.
this for 10 minutes a day for 3 days.
That's crazy.
There's many things you can use, many things neuroscientists use.
You know what's crazy? Like it's so scary because we live in an age where we have enough horror movies, right? Where we've seen people like, you know, the whole concepts of stuff like Saw, Cube, whatever, where it's like, you know, that's crazy because yeah, you could do that to a human and you could imagine like if you take some people, let's say, you take them out of a good life they have, right? No context. You just take them and be like, hey, well, you want a prize? We got you something. So you take them, right? Put them in a dark room. They start being confused. Or maybe you don't even put them in a dark room. You put them in a nice looking room, right? With all this food and shit, right? They take a bite of the apple, boom, they get shocked. Or worse, they get cut, whatever. Right? And then you force them to eat another piece. They get cut again, they get shocked, whatever. You do that, let's say 5 times, right? And then you just bring them back out, take them back in and put them back in with the rest of their status quo, right? Next day you do that again. The minute they enter that room, they know what's about to happen, right? They have no context to what's happening or why, at least in this scenario. And so let's say you keep doing that over time, right? Every time the person enters that room, they know what's going to happen, and if they feel like they can't escape it, right? There's so many levels to this to this experiment where you can kind of see how psychologically this is something that gets inherited, where when you recognize the smell of almonds, you know something's coming, or you recognize the state of a room, you know something's coming, right? Which is something that is done in horror movies a lot, which is why it's hard to make people scared, because when you put certain breadcrumbs out, the audience already knows something's about to happen, right? Which is why I don't know if it's going to be in this cut, but those trailers we looked at, where it was like some of those movies look predictable. And the problem is when you have to go be above and board with horror movies, instead of trying to make things, find new ways to scare people, they just go into the comedy route. So now the character can fight back and do all these things because you're no longer to put the audience in that room, so to speak, and they get tense, you know? The experiment doesn't work. So you have to elevate the conditions or go a different route. And you see this in history, right? When you have mass displacement of a race, and at first, you know, they'll probably be real resistant. They'll probably be real strong at holding on. But over time, that gets whittled away because they start to realize there is no escaping this reality. There is no escaping this room. There is no escaping this smell. No matter what happens when this smell comes, I'm about to get whipped, right? And when that smell is the entire continent, well, then I don't know what you do mentally at that point. So let's keep going.
Create this pairing like odor, or we can use sound. We use odor for
sensory correspondence. Yeah.
Sensory correspondence, yes. And I even said the vision, like going into the chamber will also make them
Right,
scared.
exactly, yeah.
But we use odor for a very specific reason. And I can either tell you now, or you can ask me and I can tell you. What do you want me to do?
No, let's do it.
Do
I know we
not
got
keep
it.
me guessing.
Okay.
Yes.
We use odor because odor is just a really cool sense. The lab studies smell, taste, and sound, these 3. And focusing on odor, when you breathe in, you respire, you're smelling my lovely Acqua di Parma perfume, right? And you'll remember this moment forever because of this. This is how we interact with the world. When you breathe in, there's some neurons that interact both with the world and with the brain. These neurons are called olfactory sensory neurons. So they're first order neurons that like explore the world and also can send a message back to the brain. And what we see in the nose is that every neuron in the nose expresses only one olfactory receptor. So it could pretty much only respond to a chemical that binds only to that receptor.
Wow.
So there's a level of specificity. And in speaking about epigenetic inheritance and transgenerational epigenetic inheritance, what does it mean for us to be stressed because of our ancestors? This is what we're missing in the field. And this is why I'm so proud that my lab has been able to bring this to the field, the level of specificity. Because we're not talking about your feelings getting hurt. We're talking about an odor that only binds and activates this one receptor in this nose.
Right.
And what we've been able to replicate, because another lab did this first and it came up with a lot of controversy, and then demonstrate to a higher extent, is that those neurons that smell that almond, you take that mouse out, not the moms, only the dads. You breed them, and you look at the next generation. And those generations are born with a different olfactory sensory
Get
epithelium.
the hell out of here.
So how do you?
That is
'cause
insane.
It's not as if you can look up the nose and say, oh, you've got more, or you've got the same. So how are you testing? How are you finding your results to prove?
Yes, we have a really cool new
that is
technique.
amazing.
Thank you. Yes.
I mean,
that
that's
is.
really,
What most people don't understand about some of the things that happened in slavery is that black men would be forced to breed with different black women in order to create more slaves and labor. So you would take a black man and have him breed with like 12 black women, and there were terms for this and shit like that. And it'd be funny for you to understand that these are also terms that we use in modern day to demean each other. But outside of that, this is what would happen, right? So what she's saying is you take the dad out of the environment who has these epigenetics of smelling the almond and all these things, even if the mom has it too, right? They both have it. Take the dad out, not the mom, not the one carrying the eggs, right? The one carrying the sperm. We take the dad. He goes and he breeds with all these other women. The offspring will then have a new set of epigenetics with that situation in it. And so what they're saying is that there's something going on within the sperm that gets passed down, right? And so this is insane because, again, when you put it in the historical context, you can whittle down a black man in slavery, let's say. You could whip him. You could force him to be exhausted, right? You can make him think he's on the psychological brink of death. And then it's like, you could be like, give him some women. Let's breed him, right? And then he starts breeding because maybe you can make him think he's won some sort of reward for all his hard work. So he gets to sleep with all these different black women. And then he has a bunch of children. And now those children grow up with this disdain against obedience or whatever, like it's a scary thing to kind of understand almost instantaneously how this is something that could have been done to a population to weaken their mental fortitude against what I've already described as a weaker race. At the end of the day, Europeans weren't shit. They couldn't do shit. So they had to go to these extremes of whittling down the will of stronger people because they couldn't do the work themselves. They didn't know how, right? All they knew how to do was what was right, craft, and harm. So it's
back up just for a minute.
Yeah.
You described the experiment.
This is ridiculous.
As though it was.
So what's the brain clearing though? That's how do you get to that space?
I totally
where you-
skipped a part because we're seeing that the offspring have a brain that looks like the parent. But I didn't tell you what the parent brain looks like. We take the animal out of this chamber after 3 days of odor shock pairing. We let them relax. Day 10, they actually get to, have a little fun. They breathe because we're going to look at those kids later.
Like I said.
And 21 days later, we ask them to sacrifice their life. And then we look at their brain.
Right.
And if you look at the animals that just got an odor and no shock, or just got a shock and no odor, or got odor and shock, but it's not co-terminating at the same time, their brains all look the same.
Okay.
The paired animals, we call it, the animals got the odor co-terminating with shock. They have more neurons that respond to that odor.
They now have another reason, right? It's like this weird third body situation in my mind where it's like you can have the almond and no shock, or the almond and the shock. But if you have the almond and the shock separate of each other, all your brain thinks about is still there's a sweet thing, but there's also this dangerous thing. Or with the no shock, there's just the sweet thing. But when you combine the two and you add this third thing, they now understand that there's this sweet thing, but be careful. it could also have a shock. So now you're weary. And this is when we get to this whole other conversation they're going to have about the noise in the bushes, right? And it's a reality in which people got to understand that this has led black people to be in survival mode for centuries, because they now understand there are strings attached to this good thing almost every time. Every time, actually. You're not just being given this reward because you're a good person. There's something else worse that's coming, you know? And it's so layered in how what black culture is at this point and how we've gotten to this point. I feel like I gotta add one more video. I still haven't found the proper video to really talk about it, but there's an interview with Tupac where he talks about this. And I heard it on the Breakfast Club, and I'm trying to find the actual interview, and I still can't find it yet, so I'm going to keep looking. But he talks about this, where this is how we go from singing about the way of the land and the motherland and the people to pick up your guns and start shooting the cops and fuck all this shit and blah, blah, blah. You know, like that's how it gets to that point. You know, the messaging just simply starts to change. And it's unreal. It's a very scary thing, because you see white people have they have an issue with rap music because it's so angry and violent and this and that, without understanding the reason why it's that, right?
Biology that sits there before we even get to the next generation. The brain takes energy to make new things, to change.
It's
an
electric device, so it makes sense.
So what period of time does it take for this generation of more receptors to actually happen?
We are seeing it in the order of 21 days, about a month. Wow. Cool part about the male olfactory epithelium, there's stem cells in this area.
What part? That's the part where the smell?
Exactly, the neurons that can smell the world and then send information
and you call
to
that what?
The main olfactory epithelium. Epithelium.
There's another epi.
Look at that.
Okay,
Yes.
epithelium, good, okay.
And so this tissue, it has a stem cell population. There are very few areas of the brain that have stem cells. One is the hippocampus, an area known for placement and memory. One is the olfactory bulb. This is where these neurons send the information to that go to other parts of the brain. And the main olfactory epithelium. So there's neurons that are there. They're not neurons. I take that back. They're cells that are there. And they're like, what am I going to be when I grow up? Mm-hmm. And they usually hang out and they're like, okay, I'm going to be a peppermint cell because that's what my epigenetic modifications will allow me to be. And then we give them this experience, this odor shock pairing. Mm-hmm. And what we've gone on to demonstrate, what my lab has demonstrated, is that these neurons are going to be peppermint. Say, as important as peppermint is, almonds more important.
Yeah, I'm not going to do that. I gotta make
I'm
a detour.
Bias my receptor choice.
I got to make a detour because that's more important for me.
Okay,
because now I have this experience.
I just want to
that becomes a stimuli, basically.
Exactly, it is
stimulus. Insane.
Exactly.
Just so we're on.
Wow, you're brilliant.
Thanks.
Just on the same mouse page.
Yes.
How many generations will this be present?
Our preliminary data suggests that this is not carried on to the next generation if you do nothing to the parent. And this makes evolutionary sense. If your parent has gone through a trauma and you have not come across this stressor or trauma in your lifespan, why would you give your offspring anxiety? Like, why is it that you would pass that on to the next generation if it's not relevant?
Right.
Biology's smart. It's smarter than us. And so we sometimes speak about this in a lens of like fear, we don't want this. But really, I view it as biology wanting us to survive. Because if you have more neurons in the next generation, you probably can sense this odor.
Right. So
more quickly.
It becomes a defense mechanism in a matter of speaking.
Adaptive in a way.
Right. And so I think that's really, and I think one of the things me and my grandma were talking about is that as a people, we don't know really what to do in terms of how to make things better, because everybody's kind of focused on the individual, on themselves, on this and that, to where it's like the real solution is we all have to do this together. We all have to recognize there is a problem across the board for Black people. There is a problem across the board, whether you're rich or poor as a Black person, that, whether you get stopped by the cops or not, this happens. Whether this happens to you or not, this has happened. Whether you feel like you're affected by the economy or not, this is happening to Black people. Whether it's just in the Midwest or on the East Coast, it happens. And the more of us that go into generations thinking that it isn't a problem, eventually it won't be a problem because we'll just simply ignore it. We won't think it is. And that's the problem with stuff like the Whatever podcast, where you have people like Brian who ignore these problems, who have grown up to think like, oh no, Columbus didn't do this. Columbus isn't that bad of a guy. They didn't do these things. The power structure is not bad. Men didn't do these things, blah, blah, blah. That's generational for him, right? And it's dangerous because it riles people up, not just in a rage bait, but in a very stupid way of people not understanding this dude is making content. But there are people who can listen to it and be negatively impacted. And then you have another Charlie Kirk situation where people are acting on these extreme emotions instead of handling those emotions in the right way, because we are in a very volatile state of mind at this point, due to everybody being all over the place, right? So I do think that it's important to understand the science behind the history, because this is what's been done, you know? Like, people have been put in cages and experimented on, like, not just black people. Like, this has always been done. So it's, to me, it's not too far-fetched to think that these elitist Europeans had these concepts and these mindsets of like, what if we just keep whipping them until they finally get it? And then their children will see it and their children won't fight back, you know, and they'll teach their children not to fight back. And eventually we won't have to do anything. It'll be their way of life. Right? So it's important to have these conversations on all these levels, because whether it's religion, whether it's historical, whether it's scientific, it's all real, and it's all happening every day. I just don't got whip marks on my back.
Right.
And I wouldn't call, anxiety or stressors in this area adaptive, but I do think biologically the hope is that it becomes something that the animal will allow the organism to survive.
It gives a defense mechanism that wouldn't otherwise be there. Right. And it needed it for the almonds, even though why would you need to defend against almonds?
Because you had to learn.
You in your lab gave them the electric shock.
Because that's what the world looks like, right? The world is dynamic. It's always changing. There may be times where something that originally is neutral becomes something that has to be aversive, and your brain has to learn that. It's the beauty of being able to learn that, having your genome learn that, and having that be passed on.
So if your generations are in the same environment that caused all the trauma and stress for the original parent, and it stays like that, understandable, you've got the mechanisms that you should be able to survive. But what if that environment changes and you don't long lead it? Surely you've got a slightly maladapted series of offspring.
Okay, hold on. Before we get into that answer, what he basically just described is me. If you have an offspring, if you have a black person that lives in Oakland, in those conditions where survival, awareness, intelligence, all these things matter, they grow up in that environment and then they decide to leave to a different environment, changed environment, very different environment. Would you then say that that offspring would be now maladaptive to those things? And this is something that I genuinely have always considered, because ever since I've moved to a different city, different area, different environment, these are things I'm always thinking about, because it's like I've always thought, I'm like, yeah, this place is so different. The amount of people I've seen with their cars, just doors open, no one around, no one in the car, just the door left open, unlocked, whatever. I'm like, this is crazy. What am I in right now? Right. So like mentally, I have gone through these hoops within my early years of living in this county. And even now, as I get older, it's still something that I constantly think about. One of the things that comes up, and then we've mentioned it a lot, is the fear that people have in deciding to walk in the middle of the street, right? These are psychological things that I'm experiencing that I wonder if it doesn't necessarily make the offspring more maladaptive, or if it eliminates those anxieties or triggers, but how does it change? How do those triggers change? Because I can't define it scientifically. I can't define it. I don't understand that, but I recognize that they're there. I recognize that even if in this county, the cops may never stop me or whatever, just because they've seen me enough to know that I'm not a problem, whatever, I'm a part of this community. How does that affect me if I go back to my old conditions, right? Like, it's so interesting. I don't want them to fucking dissect my brain. Leave my brain alone when I'm dead. But it's these things that I'm like, when you can look at your life and figure out where you fit in these scenarios and these dynamics, I think can really help you figure out what it is you're experiencing. So let's see what she says.
Of maladaptation. I cannot create a space in my mind that would describe biology being maladaptive.
Okay.
Because what if that odor did come back?
Right.
Right?
So if it comes
the
back,
odor could never come back, and then yes, you probably have a few more neurons, and maybe you smell a little bit less peppermint. But what if that odor does come back? Because not smelling peppermint won't kill you, but not smelling almond could.
Right.
Yes, see that.
Wow.
And so I think in the context, then the smell is still being aware of that inert feeling of when you see a cop car, right? Like, I don't know if that'll ever really go away, even if I've never get harassed, right? And so I think what we're thinking about is, what are the past triggers that trigger that almond smell, right? From the previous conditions that are still present in the current conditions. Because if those smells, let's say, are not present in the new conditions at all, then one could grow up further and lose the ability to identify those smells, right? And that was something that I always got concerned with. Sometimes I think about it, I'm like, what if you go back to Oakland and you're afraid to live in Oakland? Like, what if you are now concerned, even though you lived in that environment longer than any other environment, right? And you start thinking about all these things that could happen. And these are the smells, these things that could happen, right? And I'm not in a gang affiliated environment. I'm not in an environment where there are people who may hurt you or try to break into your stuff, or I'm not in an environment where these things are much more prevalent, so those smells, so to speak, diminish for my brain over the years, the longer I'm in this environment, just because it's not something I'm thinking about anymore. But when it does come back, those responses are still there, and I like to think of that in a cultural thing of like the way we react to things, right? For me, like, I think I was talking to my girlfriend about this. For me, big dogs are a big thing, because in my environment, people who had big dogs, if not pit bulls or whatever, were guard dogs. Those are not friendly dogs. Those are not dogs you walk up to. Those are not dogs you call to. Those are not dogs you say, oh, isn't that cute? No, that dog is about to kill you. So for me, that's always a thing on my mind, just about with just about any dog, really, that isn't like a Chihuahua or something. And it seems irrational, but when you really have grown up in an environment where there is a big ass dog on the other side of like a 9-foot gate barking at you at 6 a.m. as a 6-year-old, you kind of remember that, and you decide to walk on the other side of the street because you're afraid of what monster is on the other side of this wooden fence, right? So I've grown up to be weary of strangers and their dogs. Even if the dog looks nice, I don't give a fuck. This dog could bite me at any moment. I don't know this person's dog. I don't know why they have this dog. Even if it's the friendliest dog, I don't know it, and I've grown up in an environment where people use dogs as protection, and their dog is their protector. I work with someone who has big ass dogs who literally bark at everyone who comes on their property, but treats their owners like they're 5. It's a thing where I don't think that'll ever go away for me. But if I live in an environment long enough where that's never the case, where everybody does just have family friendly dogs that love to run up to people that act goofy, that are secretly 2 years old in their mind, so they just go around running in the trees and shit, then maybe at one point, by the time I'm 60, I'll start to see like, oh yeah, dogs aren't so scary, right? But the minute I see a dog that looks sketchy, my mind is going to say, hey, I'm going to stay 5 feet away from that one. And you may say, well, why? It looks cute. I'm like, nah, but you see the collar on that one? Fuck that. That dude is carrying it with a chain. Like, So I think these are the responses and the triggers that we kind of can discuss in people, and how that develops outside of like something like a smell or whatever. At least for me, that's the example I will use that immediately comes to mind. But I think it's layered to all these other things in society. I do think it's layered in all these other ways that we choose to interact with the world. Those smells and those receptors and those things that help us decipher what is safe and what isn't, and why, and the context. So it's fucking crazy, epigenetics, and
that's evolution.
Big word.
Right there. Happening much quicker than we normally
we describe that. It's not epigenetic, but it's in the skeptics community. We describe why it is we are so good at seeing patterns, even when there's no pattern there. Right. And it's been plausibly traced back to if you think you see a lion in the bushes,
right,
and you run away, even though there wasn't a lion in the bushes, you live another day. If you don't think there's one there and there is, then that's the end of your gene pool.
Facts.
Right. So there's a benefit to the caution, to be on the cautionary side of all
Yes.
this.
Let's throw it into
It's always safer to assume there's a lion in the bushes and be wrong than to assume that there's no lion in the bushes and be wrong. Right? I'd rather run away from nothing than think I'm safe and then wonder why my arm's missing. You know? Imagine.
We have a war in Ukraine. We have a war raging in Gaza.
Both with huge tolls on the next generation.
The stress and trauma must be unimaginable.
Unimaginable.
For the likes of me and anyone else, I'd imagine. Are we likely to see future generations experiencing all sorts of issues like we did
they're fucked
with
up.
the winter famine?
The next generations across the board are fucked up. This is the thing where we got to consider the people and all these people that are in the midst of these wars, these refugees, these survivors, these people who can't leave, these people who are experiencing these traumas. They're fucked if they get to have children. Their children are going to be fucked up and so on and so forth. Just like Americans are, their children are fucked, so on and so forth. It's just different level of warfare. You know what I mean? The thing is, like, it's just across the board. Everybody's kind of getting it in different ways. And the funniest part is China, right? Japanese people, they're like, hey, we ain't having kids. We're just going to work, you know, because they're like, hey, I don't got time, can't do it. And, you know, when the day they decide to have children, also fucked, because these are not the ways in which life should be cultivated. None of it is. None of it is. People should not be working themselves to death and choosing not to pass on their genomes. People should not be in the midst of war and having psychological trauma, physical trauma, you know, tyranny. People should not be struggling to figure out where they're going to get their next meal, living homeless, trying to, you know, children should not be struggling to read books. These are issues that are just happening from continent to continent to continent. And I understand why everybody's mixed up and confused, because you can't solve one issue because there's just too many. We literally have 99 problems and they're all bad. They're all bad, right? So when we talk about epigenetics and generational trauma, at this point, you know, we can look at the Black experience and really understand that. But how do we scale that up to a global trauma? I don't know. In 50 years, what type of people are going to be walking on this planet? God fucking knows. I don't know. That's what scares me, you know, because it could be people that are completely desensitized to not only murder, violence, and cruelty, but it could also be people so consumed into the consumer culture that they may not even be paying attention, so consumed in the content creation, so consumed into so many things that the way of life is just going to be different. And I think that's just how they want it, is they want people either riled up, if not lulled, if not with the boot on their neck, you know?
Yeah, it's really sad and heartbreaking.
Is it most likely
It would be the new black people of the world.
Yeah.
Right?
I mean, look, this is generations on generations, right?
Yeah.
And I do think, and I would love to add, my hope as a neuroscientist is that biology is adaptive and wants us to survive.
Mm-hmm.
And so although there is going to be an element of inheriting the man-made trauma, right? This is not like ethological trauma. This is man-made trauma that we are
Notice that phrase
having.
hasn't become degendered. Man-made trauma.
Nah.
I said what I said.
I was going to
We
say.
can't really, hey, this ain't the whatever podcast. We can't talk about women-made trauma, because how does that work, you know? It's always man-made. We all know it is man-made. The day we have women-made trauma is the day we win, okay? Because if they are in that much of a power over more than men in the world who have created an actual woman-made problem, I'd applaud it. I'd want it. Do more problems, please, because we need it. I'm tired of men. I am. I'm so tired of just trying, because we are bad at it. We are terrible. We have to stop. That's it. Let women try. Let them make mistakes, let them fail, let them succeed. Okay? So that way we can actually, if you want to blame women for things, let them do it. You can't keep doing the things and then blame women like you didn't do the thing. Oh, who created the Constitution? Well, men. So you're saying men are the problem? Well, yes. You did the thing. We couldn't do the thing. You know what? Fuck this.
I was gonna say,
I didn't stutter.
It's kind of hard to be gender.
Man-made, you know.
It's like human-made trauma.
Yeah, exactly.
Political, man-made trauma.
You know,
All right,
Deal with it.
Right, but I would want to finish the fact that we can still learn. Right?
We
so my
still
hope
can.
is that in understanding what's happening with these mechanisms that the Marlin Lab is studying, we can also understand a little bit more about what it means to readapt when things are not in a state of trauma. And that's what we hope to bring forward. So it's not all hope is lost.
Is there a difference in heritability between the male who experiences the trauma and the female? The female's carrying eggs,
Hands down.
but the male
Exactly.
produces sperm.
Yeah.
yeah.
This guy, can we sit on that for a second? This is the part that makes me excited about science.
Okay.
The manufactured epithelium turns over on the order of 21 days, so maybe 40 days. So like there's a neuron, it's born, live your best life, you're dead in 40 days, and a new one
In a
comes
human?
in humans and mammals. So in humans and mice.
Why does it die away?
So for example, maybe if anyone's had COVID over the last few years, you'll come to know you can't smell.
Couldn't smell.
But then after a while, you begin to smell, right? Because
Or,
there's a
or you
turnover.
smell things that you're not smelling, like gas.
Okay, I'm
That
sorry
was
you had that.
That was my experience.
Right,
I kept saying, "Who left the stove on?" I'm running around the house like, "Someone left the stove on."
And it's an
they're
electric
all
stove.
looking at me like, "What is your problem?"
Terrifying.
We have an electric oven.
Good one.
But now you
Yeah.
can smell fine.
Yeah, I'm
right?
fine.
If you ever, maybe when you played soccer, you probably head-butted a ball.
Yes.
And for a period of time, you probably couldn't smell well, or your taste was kind of funny. This is because, well, you.
But no, I can see what you're saying.
Okay.
I can see that there's a direct cause and
Yes.
effect.
Right.
Because those neurons send their dendrites, so the part of the neuron that takes in information,
Yeah.
out into this this area in the
Remind
nerves.
us of the parts of the nerve cell.
Yeah, so we have the cell body that's represented here by my well manicured hand, and then we have the dendrites here. The dendrites to sit out in the ether of our nasal cavity.
Okay.
And so as we breathe in, as we respire, we get these molecules. They bind to the dendrites.
Okay.
The dendrites are those looking like tentacles coming
Yes,
off of
coming
the,
off the top of the cell body.
Uh-huh,
Exactly.
right.
And then they'll send this message to the cell body that says, okay, there's enough of these molecules that are bound. Let's make this neuron fire electrically because neurons are both chemical and electrical.
Right.
And so it'll fire electrically and it sends that electric signal down the axon.
Okay.
And then it ends in what's called the manufactured bulb. So this is when it starts sending information to the brain, to places like the amygdala, which represent emotion, places like the piriform cortex.
So this
which is
stimulus
smell.
gets shared with parts of the brain that can take action on it.
Right.
Is that a fair way to characterize
I think that's
it?
what she's
exactly.
saying.
And this is important because it turns over every 21 days, 21 to 40 days. So do sperm.
Right.
Our data has demonstrated that when you mate a animal,
Okay.
40 days after the odor shock pairing,
Okay.
we still see this change in the next generation.
Yes.
So
That's crazy. So what she's saying is that, after 40 days, essentially these neurons reset in terms of, or return over into like new ones. But after a creature experiences these shock therapies of the smell of the almonds and shit like that, after 40 days, it doesn't go away. It's still there. It doesn't go away. They don't forget, it's still attached as an important thing to remember. And I think that's extremely, that's scary. Like, it's the brain literally saying we need to hang on to this piece of information and take action on it. So that way, when you smell almonds again, you take action and you run away from the bush, that's insane. That's insane. Science is crazy. Science is something.
Females are never shocked.
The
We would
females are
do
never
that in
shocked.
Marlin
So
Lab.
it's
No, wait. Then how does it go beyond?
Exactly. It's something happening that
just
gets
discovered
down
it.
to the
So it
sperm.
doesn't happen to the.
Females are never
never
shocked.
Hold on.
Because it turns over every 21 days, 21 to 40 days. So do sperm.
Right.
Our data has demonstrated that when you mate a animal, 40 days after the odor shock pairing, we still see this change in the next generation.
Yes.
So that's got to be the female.
Females
No,
are
but
never shocked. We would never do that in the Marlin
So
Lab.
it's-
No, wait. Then how does it go beyond?
Exactly. It's something happening
You've
that
just
gets
discovered
down
it.
to the sperm.
Right.
The females are never shocked in this case. So it is something that's happening in the sperm because it's the male sperms that's passing this thing down even post 40 days. That's spooky, bro. How do you
It's being stored
And even new
on a
sperm.
molecular
Creates the
cellular
sperm.
level. Yes.
In the gonads.
And a molecular
In the
cellular
gonads.
level.
The
it's-
epididymis?
Yes.
Is it
Yeah.
epididymis?
it gets stuck
Oh,
onto
voila,
the sperm or
epididymis.
something?
Yes, in the
That's a word.
epididymis.
That's a word.
Epididymis.
It
Yes,
shouldn't
it's
be.
inside your balls.
Epididymis.
But then again,
It's always in the balls,
it's
though.
Ball sack. It's your epididymis. I know.
Don't go technical on me.
Don't go technical. Don't get tested.
Epididymis. The epididymis.
That's the what? The thing that creates sperm.
The epididymis is an area of the inside the testes in which immature sperm, so like their sweet baby sperm, they go into the epididymis and they get what's called an epididymisomal payload. This is not the work that we have pioneered. This is work that others have pioneered that demonstrate if you have, like, for example, low food.
Okay.
So in metabolics has been demonstrated. There is a payload of information that comes from the liver or that's in the liver and also found in the epididymis. And what happens is these sperm go through the epididymis, they mature, they get grown, and they also get this payload, the epididymosome, that says you were starved. And they bring that down to the next generation.
Yes. So years ago,
So it's like they get this little thing where it's like, all right, we're getting the stuff, we're getting the things that we need. Cool. But also just remind you, y'all were starved as fuck. So just carry that piece of boulder with you. All right, now keep going. You know, so that's scary that it gets attached. So it does get attached to all these other things that the sperm is getting within the testicles. And that's a lot of trauma to pass down between 12 women when you're making a male breed, you know? That's a lot. Say that's 3-4 kids per woman. I don't know, what's 3 times 12? 24. That's now 3 children with the level of trauma that, let's just say you were in slavery, that you were starved, beaten, oppressed, exposed, whatever, diseased, you know. Not that you didn't get the things that didn't get passed down, that you were from a wealthy, rich environment, you were happy, you know, things have been great, good health. These things I'd imagine aren't as heavy as the other things, right? In terms of what it means to be able to survive and adapt. In order to not starve this time, we're going to make sure we obey and follow the rules, because my father didn't, and he got hung.
And you maybe you'll know this, and I can't. I'm so sorry, but I read a study.
You were trying to look it up?
I was trying to look it up, but I was trying to look up the study itself, and it dealt with sperm production and cocaine use in men. Do you know the study I'm talking about?
I believe I do.
Sperm and cocaine.
It was done at Penn?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
It
was fascinating.
We're in a space.
Because the men were passing the information on in their sperm that equated back to the cocaine use. Wow. And it was just fascinating too. But this is exactly what we're talking about.
So essentially, then at that point, when it comes to sperm, this is more of a conversation than about drug use, right? Like how that passes down through addiction or whatever. Like I think people could understand something like that, right? Because we always be like, oh, if your father was an alcoholic, you're going to be one, you know. But this is how that type of thing happens. Is those receptors and those stimuli get passed down through the sperm. So if your father's taking cocaine, you know, you might grow up to seek that type of stimuli out in basic terms, and I think it's
What you're saying
fascinating.
there is, outside of a stress trauma, certain environmental circumstances can have an effect on the way the epigenetics are altered.
Right.
We do know that stress and trauma do.
So there's cocaine
exacerbate
use
this.
is lifestyle. Yes. There must be all sorts of other things. I'm guessing environmental pollutions and all sorts.
So do you have a list? I mean, can you make rank list of avoid this because it'll mess up your gonads?
Right.
I mean, that's,
Well, we don't want to say mess
people
up.
will respond to that list.
But it may not be mess up. It will change. And change is not always bad.
That's true.
Right?
But are you willing to take that experiment on to see if it goes good or bad?
I'll take some cocaine.
All right. So what has risen to the top of people's research efforts are studying the bad effects.
Uh-huh.
Yes.
So give me an example of something that could be a good effect.
Oh, here we go. This is going to be the giraffe example. All right. Now, you see how I'm not stupid. I read. Okay. I made the giraffe example about them growing long necks, and people think it's silly and people could think it's goofy, but it is not that. It is fact. It is simple fact. Giraffes recognized that if they want to eat the leaves on the higher trees, they have to get longer necks. So they tried to stretch. You know what I'm saying? And it didn't happen overnight, no. But over time, genetically speaking, they passed that down, that the best leaves were at the highest tree. And so the ones that stretch further continue to do that even genetically. So now you have giraffes that are very tall, right? That takes millions of years to do, but it happens and it is real. So I'm not crazy.
In the epigenetic transgenerational.
Could I give you something that would be an example of a good effect? I think a good effect is biology saying if it ain't broke, don't fix it.
Uh-huh.
Right? Like it may not be that
So
we
the
need
good effect
to.
is the neutral effect.
Voila.
Yeah, the neutral effect is good. Right, yeah.
Right, now, studies
you
are
spend
going
a lot
on.
of time on a yacht and your children come out going, what? Oh, damn. Mom, I'm so terribly.
This isn't the giraffe example yet. We're getting there. We're getting there.
Yeah, the starvation threshold is different when you're on a yacht. No, for example, just as an example.
Yes.
It's long been known that suicide rates
Uh-huh.
are higher among people who are less traumatized. Right? So suicide rate for black Americans was way lower than for white Americans, especially wealthy white Americans.
And black females is the lowest. Believe it or not.
But of course, those
and they
numbers
have it the hardest.
So it's saying what he says is people with less trauma are higher at suicide rates than people with more trauma. The data show that black women are least likely to commit suicide, and things like that. And I'm like, yeah, this is always a fascinating thing about how the brain perceives epigenetics and proceeds to survive. You know, like we have issues as a people, black people, sure. But I'm telling you, these white European people are fucked up, bro. They are destroyed from this probably a little bit more than we could understand. I don't know if it'd be more than us, like I said, but more than we can understand. Because again, we understand the pain of what we've gone through. But I mean, imagine you were the ones and you didn't have anything to do with it. You're like, I didn't even know, man. I didn't know. What do I do? How do I live? Right? Talk about that level of stress too, because it is exist and it does need to be acknowledged. We all need to acknowledge the pain of what has happened. So that way we can all work on getting to a better place, right? We have to get there. We have to get there. So, you know, suicide rates.
Those numbers have been creeping up a little recently, which is a sign of more equality, I guess. But
creeping, it's creeping up, so we're getting a little more equality.
What a metric!
That's crazy. That's crazy.
Was angry as a white male. Okay, cool.
So
we're slowly getting up there with them.
Is relevant or even interesting, but as they say, your biggest problem is your biggest problem.
Mm-hmm.
So if you're on the yacht and there's a delay
I see where you're going with
caviar
this.
and you have a big party you're trying to put on, you could be very stressed by that.
Don't judge my trauma.
Sure.
Yeah, okay.
Don't judge my trauma. My trauma is my trauma.
To the
Sure.
sheriff.
If you're on the yacht, you had a caviar, you got a big party. That could stress you out a lot. Yeah. Sure.
Yes.
Your trauma.
Don't know how that gets you to suicide though. But I mean, I could understand. And I think it's because we have to go back to the beginning of the experiment. The rat that has never experienced trauma, when it first experiences that shock, it's going to change it dramatically, right? And so you think about a spoiled Nepo baby who has never experienced anything bad in its life. The minute they get a cut on their arm, oh, it's all hell that breaks loose, right? It's the worst thing that could have possibly happened to them because it is the worst thing that could have possibly happened to them. You see what I'm saying? So when you never experience something bad, you never know. The response to it has the potential to be so much more lethal. And I guess that's where you could see there is being a higher suicide rate among white Americans than others, because they aren't used to experiencing bad shit all the time. You know, sometimes that doesn't get passed down for them. So, you know, we are used to experiencing the hangings, the oppression, the suppression, the racism, the discrimination, the bigotry, the attacks, the outcasting, the ostracism, the sexism, all of it, right? So when it happens to us, the first thought isn't, I'm going to end my life. No. There's a lot more other thoughts that come across because you're used to this shock with this smell. But if you've only ever had the smell and then you get the shock, you might just blow your brains out because it's too much to bear.
Trauma.
From a psychologist lens, yes.
Yes.
The biggest deal in this mouse life is that it got its foot shocked. We all stubbed our toe at some point within this last week. We're not really going to remember. Right? It happens often.
Right.
But in the dynamic of this
I
mouse,
didn't,
yes,
but-
that's
but-
so much better than us.
I didn't stub my toe. I haven't stubbed my toe in a minute.
I'm coordinated, okay? Sorry.
I'm
not
lucky
gonna
that way.
apologize.
Yes. I could see the biggest problem being the biggest problem. I think when we think about looking at humans, you have to take culture into consideration.
Right.
And that's what we separate when we study mice. Why we have a model organism like mouse is because we can control everything else.
Uh-huh.
Right? There are definitely cultures in which the morbidity associated with suicidality is higher.
Right.
My mother's from Guyana, South America. At some point, it had the highest suicidality rate. It no longer does. I think it's number 3 now.
In the world?
In the world.
Wow.
Yes. Right? And we saw that there was a trend with the 3 major populations, which are Indo-Guyanese, Afro-Guyanese, and Chinese Guyanese, or like Asian Guyanese, as well as a native population. And it was higher in the Indo-Guyanese. But there are also different cultural aspects of being Indo-Guyanese. So I think it's harder to parse
So
out
you
in
got to
that
get the
way.
basic science in there first before you get
before you jump
sociological.
hands down. I think it's wise. Yeah.
Interesting. Of course
It's
it
wise
is.
and respectful to go
Otherwise,
that way.
it's a big tangled mess and you don't know what your
Mm-hmm.
causes and
And no
effects
one
are.
fixed
All right,
anything.
Gary,
What happens if the shocks were generational and continued?
Yes.
If
So
it's
right now, what
continued.
we are observing is an intergenerational change. But what if the environment doesn't change even in the next generation or the generation after that?
If the environment doesn't change, what happens? Well, like I said, you stop singing about the motherland and you started seeing pick up the guns, fuck the cops and shit like that because,
This is when we can start to envision a
react.
space. What we're looking at is an actual evolution change in evolution, and
Yeah.
not just an epigenetic change.
It's that evolution.
Because and we have not demonstrated this, nor have other labs, but it could be the space in which for 7 generations you get the odor foot shock.
Yeah.
And then you have the 8th, you'll expect to see the change in brain. What if you do nothing to the 8th and then look at the 10th? Is this when it finally has stopped becoming intergenerational
So then, like,
and finally overrode?
So in that 12th generation, what we see is the same expression that we did in the 8th and the 7th, but we created that 8th and 7th.
And
now
then for a
it's
few
just
generations.
happening.
No, but wait.
So
but that smells Lamarckian here.
People say Lamarckian as if it's like
Okay, let me do right
first
by
of all,
Lamar.
who is
we gotta do right by Lamarck, okay? Jean-Baptiste Lamarck came maybe half a century before Darwin's. You also want to give credit where credit's due. Darwin's work is built upon what Lamarck studied. If I could put that in a nutshell, pretty much what Lamarckian inheritance would describe is a giraffe.
Oh, here we go.
walking in-
Here we go. Fucking giraffe example. I told you. Now we have to wait a while to get here, right? But when we talk about the generation that gets left alone, I'm that generation. This is what happens when you leave the generation alone and then you try and do it again to the next one. The generation that got left alone becomes Superman, okay? Because now I'm an outlier. I got both sides. I was like, well, this is what happened before. This didn't happen to me. Why is this happening to them? Oh shit, something's off. Let me go back and rewind. Oh shit, we got issues, right? This is what happens to that ninth generation that gets left alone, right? Because now we're here at the giraffe example. And I spent 3 days getting to this example, but it's worth it because it proves that you have a brain and that you can perceive the world as it actually is instead of as they instruct you to see it. The shit is not fake. It's all real. It's all happening. And if we're not careful, when giraffes' necks start getting shorter, and we observe that in the wild, and we're all confused why their necks are now 3 inches shorter than previous generations, we should be concerned. We should be, right? I'm not crazy.
In its giraffe space, and it sees green leaves on top of a tree, and it's like, okay, I really want these green leaves. So I'm gonna hope and wish and stretch and try to get those leaves.
Try to get the leaves.
And as you try, your neck gets longer. And then you have a longer neck, voila.
And the next generation.
There you go. Said it. You heard it from me. You heard it from a scientist. I'm not
It's even
dumb.
longer.
Exactly.
So it's an acquired
environment-
characteristic
Yes.
from things that
based
happen.
on your circumstances or surroundings.
Based on your
Exactly.
circumstances
Whereas
and
Lamarck,
surroundings.
Darwin says, You were born with a long neck. You eat all the top of the leaves. All your cousins die with short necks, and now you get to breed more and have a
And that would
everyone has
be
a
you
long
were
neck.
selected to remain because
Exactly.
your neck was suited for eating trees.
And everybody
And
else
it
died.
And everybody else
doesn't
died.
mean that it's one or the other. It does not have to be nature versus nurture in this space.
Okay.
It could be an and or.
So is this adapt and survive, or is that just just too broad a stroke?
I think this is what it comes back to: how many generations does the smell continue on?
Right.
What we can say is that former studies that went on after Lamarckian inheritance became a concept where scientists would go in and they would say, okay, well, let's see if Lamarck is real. We're going to go take this mouse. We're going to cut off its tail.
Okay.
And let's see if the next generation is born with no tail. In fact, let's do it for 3 generations. We do not do this in the lab. Let me clarify, right?
We don't
but
cut
for
off
3
tails.
generations, you cut off the mouse tail, and
Do
you
it with
see.
poodles. So don't apologize for not doing it to mice.
Okay, exactly.
Okay.
And poodles are still born with tails.
Yes, with long tails. They cut them short to make it a little bushy tuft. But right.
So they said, okay, Lamarck is wrong. But what they didn't study is, are the mice now afraid of the scientist who comes in with the lab coat and scissors?
Oh,
So what are we
right.
really-
Okay, let me break that down for a minute. So you're trying to say, if we cut off 3 generations of tails on a mice, will the generation then grow up with smaller tails? Right? That's the theory. That's the I think that's the Lamarckian one. But the reality is, it doesn't matter. They're going to continue to grow with long tails. The only thing that's going to change is their disdain for the scissors and the cutting of the tail, because now generationally they have come to understand that their tail gets cut. It's something that they don't want. You know, it's not something that you can it can just happen, right? It doesn't work that way. It's not in the benefit of the species to have the shorter tail. It is a man-made trauma, right? Bro, why are we not learning this in school?
Focusing our question and answer on.
Because that would be a psychological trauma, not just a physical change.
Facts.
Let's turn this around, because we've talked about traumas. We're going to cut the tails off young animals, right? How cute, how wonderful. What if you get exposed an animal to something pleasant and continued that pleasant exposure? Do you find that becomes a more balanced, a happier creature?
No, it's not a happier creature if it only experiences the good things. Because again, if you have the Nepo baby on the yacht, right, the minute it runs out of caviar, it's going to blow its brains out, because it's only experienced the positive. And this is the thing we have to understand about how life works before all of this bullshit. Life is chaos and order. Life is good and bad. It is a balance and a mixture of both happening at the same time. Life is a decision to experience that. You cannot just have one without the other. If you have one without the other, it's going to go very bad, right? You cannot force one or the other. It is an acceptance that both are going to coexist and being able to live within that. And I think that philosophically, that is existence in a nutshell, is that when you choose to be conscious and live, you are choosing to be a part of what this chaos and order is. You are choosing to get involved in that bar fight, because that is life, right? We choose that on a conscious level. All animals, all living things choose to be a part of this chaos and order because of the benefits of being a part of both. I think when we come to life after death, there is much that we don't understand, right? There's much to the life and death balance of things. But I think that life itself, consciousness, existence, and being is that balance, is that understanding there is no balancing it. There is only accepting it and finding a way to move within it, right? And what we're talking about isn't man-made chaos and order. I'm talking about natural chaos and order, right? I'm not talking about stopping lions from killing prey. That has to happen in order for lions to survive, right? But we don't have to prevent the ability for those lions to kill, right? We don't have to deforest the Amazon. We shouldn't be doing things like that, because that disrupts the natural chaos and order of life, right? The natural events that happen on this planet, the floodings, the whatever, these are things that are outside of our control, because guess what? Physics, things are going to happen that we just simply can't control. But if we start trying to control the way things are, the way things should be, and discern, again, squirrels don't have an economy. I don't think they need one. because they adhere to the natural chaos and order of life. They understand that if they can't get this squirrel, this tree, this whatever, they're just going to go find another one, because there's an abundance of trees. There should be, for them to be able to go and find the resources they need. They know if they pick off all the acorns off this tree, that's okay. That tree's going to grow more, right? A lion's not going to kill every antelope in the safari. It's going to kill what it needs, because they understand that if they do kill all of them, there's not going to be any more food left. They need the antelopes and shit to breed and have offspring. So they're not going to kill all of them. That's why when you see animals chasing them, cheetahs have a cap. They can only run so fast for so long before they get tired. And that's the antelope's saving grace. If it can outrun the cheetah, outlast the cheetah, it will survive. But the cheetah is also extremely fast. So if it's fast enough to catch that antelope, it's going to eat it, but it's not going to catch all 5. That's the natural chaos and order of life, right? But when we start disrupting that and we start taking that for granted, start dictating how those scenarios play out, it's always going to end badly. It's always going to end badly. And it's only going to disrupt them on a genetic level, to where things just become harder to happen. And then we get endangered animals. We get endangered species. Pandas are always going to be useless, right? But I don't know. Maybe if we put them in their natural environment and stop fucking with it, whatever happens to a panda is what's going to happen to a panda. But a man-made situation where that panda now dies is a problem, especially if we have no need to kill it. So these are the things.
I know, this is not going to happen anywhere, right? But is it possible
Let the
to
giraffe's
have
neck
other
grow,
things
bro.
transferred, not just trauma?
If I were to have a conversation with biology, I think what biology would say back to me is like, let's survive so we can thrive.
Right.
All right.
If sugar is good, if flowers smell good, we're good.
Wait, do you have conversations with biology
All the
often?
time.
How do you
All
talk
the
to
time.
biology?
And it speaks back to me.
Nice. Okay.
In the way neurons fire. Like science is so beautiful.
All right.
Right. But what we think is happening when it comes to a stressor is that there's something called coincidence detection. And we talk about this as electrophysiologists who record from neurons in the brain. When one neuron fires and another neuron hears that firing and also fires, it's coincidence detection. We have an animal who's smelling the environment, so those neurons are firing, and it gets a shock. That's another pathway that's now firing the same time those olfactory sensory neurons are firing. Mm-hmm. If we have something pleasant, we could have the smell of a flower, maybe some dopamine be released, and that could be paired. But it may not be.
Dopamine makes you feel good.
Dopamine's a neurotransmitter that makes you feel good. But would that be enough of a threshold to say, now let's take all the energy necessary to make sure animals smell flowers more?
Oh.
It's already roped into what the pleasant circuitry looks like.
Right.
But I think the best way to answer that question would be, let's override it with something really good.
Mm-hmm.
Let's give them some good cocaine.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Because it's so good that it's bad.
Mm-hmm.
How does that change the next generation?
Mm-hmm.
Oh.
That's the way I would
right. There's a very huge difference between the dopamine you get from a flower as opposed to the dopamine you get from cocaine. Right. So if you you're like, dopamine comes from these flowers. People smell them, they feel nice. If we extract that dopamine, let's put it in a more concentrated substance. We can give them the dopamine straight on, and bro, party starts. So yeah, now we're getting into a different conversation about society and addictions and attention economy and how you can influence people's levels, through putting things in front of them that will hijack their dopamine or whatever. I don't know if we've ever done that as a society. I don't think we've done that, I don't think we've done that. No.
Approach that experiment.
No, isn't that true with most things? They're so good, they're bad.
Well, yeah, I mean, sugar is certainly one. There are sugar receptors in our stomach, on our tongue, in our brain.
Too much of anything is a bad thing.
Because it's essential for survival.
Right.
It's got high calorie density.
Exactly. Yeah. But at one point,
then it gets hijacked.
But it was scarce
by candy bar company.
But it was. But the scarcity is what allowed it to be. Oh, it's so good, and hey, I got to get this because you're not going to get it. But now that it's abundant, now it's a bad thing because you can get it all the time.
Right.
So it's subject to abuse.
Those same receptors have been hijacked by modern civilization.
Right.
Yes.
So you would agree or possibly even lament that these features of our adaptability in modern times, if you don't need that adaptation, yet you still have manifestations of it, a clever advertiser or a clever marketing person can hijack those sensory urges.
Of course.
Yeah,
Yes.
absolutely.
Yes.
And whose responsibility is that to
marketer.
fix that? Yeah.
So we've discussed Chuck's need for sugar. Because he quite needs to survive. Senses, sight, smell, taste, they're all sensory, so it's all survival.
Yes.
This whole
Hands
thing
down.
of epigenetic inheritance
Yes.
is,
Survive to thrive.
a simple umbrella to my mind is survival.
What to me, the reality has always been the same. I mean, man, I should have been a scientist, I guess, right? I could have had a Nobel Peace Prize at 12. Because to me, what has always been fun to understand is that sex is the act of reproduction, right? That's pretty much why we do it. It is to reproduce your cells, reproduce your genes, pass on yourself onto a new version, right? If you want to be scientific sci-fi about it. But I always thought that was fascinating. I even asked my dad about it one time many years ago. I was like, don't you think it's weird that there's like little versions of you running around the world? Like, we're little different versions of you technically. Don't you find that odd? Like, I'm just a different version of you that just lived at a different time technically. At least half of you anyway. And he thought it was a strange question, but I'm like, that we have to kind of remember that's how sex works on a scientific level, that it is these cells and these things that we are passing down, right? And we pass down these things about ourselves and these traumas and these issues that we need to be aware of. And I think all this data kind of shows the dangers of that, like whether it's sugar or not, like it's dangerous if we don't have those conversations.
So therefore it's as necessary as oxygen.
Oh, hands down. Hands down.
Amazing.
Let me run it back. Hold on.
This whole
Hands
thing
down.
of epigenetic inheritance is,
Survive to thrive.
A simple umbrella to my mind is survival.
Yeah.
And so therefore it's
And what do parents say all the time, right? Learn from my mistakes. Why? So that way you can survive. So then you're the next one after you can survive. So then the next one after you can survive. Because guess what? I'm best believe if I have children, they're going to learn from what I've gone through, right? And therefore they're always going to be, hopefully, right? The goal is that the next offspring is better than you. Right. And we don't just mean that in life. We mean that genetically. We mean that they are going to thrive and live a little bit longer, that they are going to thrive and be a little bit happier, that they are going to thrive and be able to reproduce. So that way, not just our genetics pass down, but like we survive. And that's all this is. That's all this has ever been, is the ability for genes to survive. And when you look at things like the what's the fucking thing called? The genetic experiments that they did, right? I forget the name of it, the eugenics programs and things like that. These are all things with that in mind, right? The superior quote unquote race has to survive. America is for those who are the best of the best. These are the things, the messaging that happens throughout history and has always been, right? Because the people in power and the ones in power want the best at their feet, right? So they pick the best slaves, they pick the best workers, they pick the best craftsmen. And most of the time, the best slaves obviously were black, right? And in their mind, we were the best because they couldn't outsmart the indigenous people after a certain point. They could kill a lot of them, but they couldn't capture them and force them to work, so they took black folks, right? And they created these elaborate systems, these oppressive systems, because unfortunately that's what they decided to develop across the board, is how to hurt people instead of how to thrive, because they couldn't figure it out from jump. They left Africa and just couldn't figure it out. That's what I thought was interesting. Everybody left Africa, went and did their thing, right, and figured it out some way or not, and Europeans just fumbled completely. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's just evident in history constantly. They couldn't figure this, so they went and conquered and stole from other people. They couldn't figure this out, so they manipulated and lied. They didn't want to lose their power. They didn't want to feel like this. They found out that this experiment was wrong, so they lied to people, right? Like, all it is just manipulation to hide the fact that their brains just simply was not developed beyond the ability to brutalize and be savage. It's fine. I get you. I understand why you had to have a lot of books. I get it. You're not smart. We had kingdoms. We had civilization. Indigenous people had societies. They had civilizations. They had understanding of so much more than you could have actually understood, because you came to this land thinking it was India. I get it. You're dumb. But there's no reason to take it out on all these other races that figured it out. It's not hard. Just ask for help. Just say, hey, can you help me? I don't know how to tie my shoes. Help me. You know? So that's really what it is at the end of the day. I think we can probably cut the video here, because I think that's pretty much the gist of what this video is, right? It is the history of these systemic things and traumas and man-made traumas that have shaped the world that we live today. And the more we all kind of continue to think that these are things that are natural, they aren't. War is not natural, not at this scale, not at this cost. Destroying the planet is not natural. Destroying our sense of life is not natural. Destroying all these things, destruction itself is not inherently natural, because you're not, there's nothing to balance that destruction out. You know, if there was a level of destruction on this magnitude, there would be something that comes with it. When the destruction came, when the meteor came to destroy the dinosaurs, right? Let's say the things that came out of it are all of life that we see walking today. It didn't just destroy this planet. And I think even if it did, the remnants of planet Earth would have been repurposed within the confines of the cosmos to be another planet, right? A chunk of the planet broke off. What happened? Became the moon, right? There's always a balance. There's always a balance to the level of destruction committed. And when there is no balance, it's not natural. It only gets worse. So I think, however this episode comes out, it will be one that I will think about for a while. And I think that as we get through this year, I really do want to shift the conversation within this podcast to be stuff like this. We're still going to get goofy, don't get me wrong, but I never want to take advantage of the platform that we have to not focus on important topics, because I think too many people our age, we have taken it for granted. There are books, there are things, there are research papers, there are documents, there are real people that we can talk to and engage with to get a clearer understanding of what's happened, what's happening, and how we can prepare for those to come, and what it actually means to build a better future. Because you can't build that if you honestly don't know what's been happening. So it's 2026. We have just under 330 days before GTA 6. Man, it's time to evolve before the AI gets here, huh? It's time to evolve. So, with that being said, I'm Father B. This is the Young Talk Podcast. And I will see you on the next one. Peace. Put men in the strip club, put them both in there together. Like, what are we talking about here? We're talking about strip clubs. We're not talking about exclusively women's strip clubs. I would say yes.